We are red is on. Time being 4:45 Thursday. Welcome to the Selectmen's meeting. The chairman is not here right now, but he'll be joining us. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, the original way is much shorter.
It was.
What's that? The original
Pledge.
Oh,
No, it's
what,
changed
1892?
numerous times over the year.
Yeah, we know that. 1954 was what created the pledge we say today. Oh, that was the last time we changed it.
Okay. First thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes of October 24th, 2019. We'll move those to the floor for discussion.
You touched it. On the first page on the fifth building subcommittee update. It mentions in two places about the dormer. The first one says removing the dormer. And then a few sentences below it says rendering shows the remaining dormer is being removed. So I'm assuming the first one is over the door.
Yeah, say the main dormer,
Okay. And then after that,
or I could say front dormer, how's that?
that's good. And so removing the dormer and attic trusses. It should say attic style trusses, I think. Otherwise people are gonna think that's nothing holding the roof up. And then it says, after the bold discussion, metal roofing is now shingled. Dormers were to the attic trusses. I don't know what that means.
Dormers were to, discussion, metal roofing is now shingled dormers were to attic trusses.
And then it says rendering shows the remaining dormers are removed, so I don't know what we're trying to say with dormers were to the attic trusses.
Metal roofing is now shingles. Dormers were,
Changes were made to the attic trusses. Changes were made from the storage style to just a weight bearing.
changes were made to the attic trusses to, what'd you say, Peter? To,
Well, instead of attic trusses, they're just roof trusses.
okay. All right.
Not designed to have a usable space. And then, we've got, it talks about the mechanical equipment. Mechanical equipment is to be placed on the ground. We should,
Where's that at?
that's above. That's in the
Okay.
second sentence.
Yep, okay.
We should say something about the discussion we had on that it needs to be protected from the snow. Snow falling from the
Okay.
roof,
Noting it needs
whatever you think is best, but I
to
just think,
be protected from snow.
I'd like the public to know that we thought of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question on the bottom of 4 and 2 of 4 about the field. And it says, Jeannie commented the conversation could be had with Milestone. However, there was never any discussion with them or the architect, and it is not in the committee's purview to rebuild the field. So my understanding is that we were going to take that back to Milestone and ask them for a price on what that was as an add-on. I thought we were going to look into the possibility of having what it would cost as an add-on to finish the work to the ball field. Ask them about it.
That wasn't my understanding, but I'm happy to do that. I think they would, probably what they would tell us is, you know, it's because it's not within their purview to do that.
Well, it's
So-
not, you're correct, it's not in their purview,
To
but
do
it's
what?
it's within our purview to ask them as an add-on to find out the cost because of the mobilization. They're already gonna be there. To Peter's point last week, they're gonna be there. So what would it cost for an add-on to finish that field as the ball, level it off and put it back where it was for a ball field? So I thought we were going to ask them for an addendum.
I
I
didn't,
don't think,
I didn't understand that. And all I'm saying is that the contract, that the construction management contract that we have with Milestone does not include looking at that. So,
There will be addendums through the contract too that weren't foreseen that we'll be paying for also.
So nobody knows, so we have a project that involves the ball field, which is going to involve a new PD. And we told them at the town meeting that there's still going to be plenty of room for the ball field, and that there may be slight changes because of construction on the ball field. But now we're in a situation where, having trouble articulating what I'm trying to say. Now we're in a situation where it's a he said, she said, what, we don't have any idea of how much it's going to cost to put that ball field back to where it's at. Nobody is willing to go out and get a cost of how much it's going to cost to get that ball field. Everyone's saying, you know, it's not my job and it's not in my purview. Well, we need to find somebody that can help us to give us at least a scope of an area of a roundabout,
but is that
in
part of-
parentheses, the
is this part of the
cost.
minutes? That's what I guess, is
We
that a
talked
different
about it last
discussion, or-
week, and Peter had said they're going to be there. Could they give us, we're not saying go ahead and do it, we're saying could they look at it and give us a price of what it would, if we were to ask them to go and do this, if the town voted for them to do this, this is how much it would cost them to do that.
I remember having the conversation, Pat, but I don't remember this board having consensus saying that's what we were gonna do, and
Yeah,
that's,
don't.
so if you're talking about that being in the minutes,
I thought that we talked about it because I know Catherine and Peter and myself said yes, so I would say that that would be consensus.
I clearly remember saying that we're gonna have to discuss this again and decide on that. We didn't, in the minutes, or in the actual discussion at that time, we didn't say we were going to have it as an add-on. If we
Perhaps
wanted
we
to,
need to review the minutes, the audio, to see what the discussion actually was.
so you want to table the minutes?
yeah, I can,
I was going to point out for an architect that didn't know anything about the field, we had plans that clearly showed a field on it in its new location, so they had to have known something.
do you wanna table these minutes and I'll go back and look at the audio?
Doesn't matter to me.
Or, rather than that, later in the discussion tonight, going forward, make a discussion, have a discussion on where we're gonna go forward and who we're gonna get to give us estimates on getting the ball field ready.
But that didn't have anything to do with the minutes that
It
we're
is if
looking
we're
at,
gonna
right?
approve the minutes and it's not in
So-
there.
Right.
So,
Why don't you just why don't you table these minutes, let me go back and look at the audio.
that's probably the best. Then we'll have, we'll discuss.
So I don't know if somebody wants to make a tabling, nobody made any motion to do anything like that.
I'll make a motion to table the minutes of Thursday, October 24th, 2019, till we review the audio
Second?
discussion. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Well, we only have 2 for.
Yeah, I'm gonna decline to vote, I'm not sure why you made a motion
Yeah,
to table minutes.
Didn't see a
I
reason.
moved them to the floor, had to do something with them.
Why?
We didn't vote
Yeah,
on,
okay, let's just move forward.
we didn't vote on
That's just fine.
just minutes.
John, do you have the,
Yeah, I saw that.
that's next.
So the motion to table fails. Any changes to the minutes? And what, were there changes that were going to be made to that section?
I thought we agreed to wait to approve the minutes until the audio had been listened to.
Isn't that what tabling it was until we?
No, we just made a consensus that we wait. There was no motion to move the minutes to the table, we didn't vote on anything.
Oh.
We just,
So when any of the amendments will be reviewed at the next time when we move the table officially to the minutes to review them. Right?
You lost me, could you repeat it, please?
Okay, so what happened is there was no motion made to bring the tables, bring the minutes
We never do.
for review.
No.
This is what I'm talking about right now, what's going on with these minutes of Thursday, October 25th, 2019. Was there a motion to bring them to the table for discussion?
No.
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 No. Okay, so since they weren't brought to the table for discussion, Catherine's pointing out that we don't need to table them because they were never brought forward to the table for discussion. So therefore, we're just making a consensus that we will review them and we'll look at them next week. Unless somebody wants to bring them to the table right now officially, and then we can go back the other way.
And just for clarification, I am going to review the audio to check to see if there was a discussion about us asking, because I think that's what Pat was saying.
Yeah.
I don't
I'm
recall
sure
that,
they're
so.
wording right on that.
Okay.
So everything's covered.
Right.
Okay, the next thing we have on there is, we have a check here from Charles Doan to the Tilton Senior Center, a donation of $250.
You,
So we'd like to make a motion that we accept that.
second.
Here we have a motion and a second discussion. It says on here, I noticed in the line, it says Van EOT. What does that mean? No? So does that mean if we accept this, this can only go towards a van?
I gave you my only copy, so I don't,
Yeah.
you had it.
Van, et cetera, ECT.
ECT?
Yeah, et cetera.
So that
Yeah.
would be basically
Whatever.
whatever.
Okay.
But he'd like it to go with the van,
That's
apparently.
the strong. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved unanimously. Thank you, Charles Stone. Next thing we have, Kevin, come on down. Hi. So, what brings you here, money?
This is the budget, yes. So budget season.
It's in Tim's package, John. It's in Tim's package,
Yes.
separate. No, it's separate.
You may not have passed it out because
No.
John wasn't here.
No, I did.
He passed it out separate from,
I have another copy.
look under your FYI,
Oh.
FYI, right there, under your, there you go.
It has the paper
John?
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, with that,
So I made some changes to my budget this year. I've had a year working as director and trying to fine tune where I'm at financially with all of my lines. Okay. Some of the major changes are with the overtime line, which is $7,000 reduction because of the joining of the technician slash director position. I'm going to continue with my normal plow route and my duties in the wintertime. So that will actually reduce the amount of overtime needed because you won't be paying me overtime basically. So what I did was I just pulled an average of what was paid to me in the previous years and took it out.
But
Any
yet,
questions?
for a year, it looks like as of October 31st, we had 42,638 spent for overtime.
That was because my position didn't change until April. So from January to April, I was on overtime.
Okay. And you're comfortable with that, obviously.
Oh, yes. Yep. Yeah, I'm going to be right there with the guys plowing every storm.
I'm concerned with the reduction of the part-time wages.
Okay.
I know because you've really been really good with trimming the amount of people that you have.
Mhm.
And I'm just, last year you were really on the fence about hiring seasonal.
Mhm.
And I'm just, this limits you tremendously on getting that seasonal person. So just,
Yeah.
what are your plans for that?
My plan for that is not so much a part-time driver for plowing, but it's for part-timers to come in and help us with snow shoveling to clean up Main Street, because we're going to be paying a little bit more attention to Main Street cleanup this year, and leaving no snow left on Main Street every time we clean up. So that means we're going to be, I'd like to hire a couple of younger people to run a snow shovel and just help us with the manual labor aspect of it.
What about the summer and the seasonal that you usually end up with an extra?
The summer seasonal, we didn't utilize any this year, and going into next year, I don't foresee needing one next year. Without getting into too much detail, I'm pretty confident that we'll be in a good shape, a good position next year, personnel-wise,
Okay.
to handle more. The other larger reduction is the fuel budget.
What's your heat?
The heat,
Yeah,
that's under
that's
gas.
Huh?
That's under the gas bill
How come that's up 600?
because of the increase in rates for natural gas. It's gone up that much.
We currently don't have a contract. Rates are much higher than our former 3-year contract. So,
Need a wood furnace.
Uh,
Kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
That's part of my plan. I actually have been looking into some furnaces to burn our yard waste, to help.
Not the waste oil burner, but
Yard waste, branches and leaves.
For inside?
We're inside the building to offset our heat cost. Yep. It comes to us. It's
Right.
free. We need to find someplace to put it.
They're higher, because everything I've been reading, that we have a glut of natural gas and it's been the lowest it's ever been.
it's not. In 2016, we got I want to say it was a 5.2 cent per therm back then. And right now, they're hovering around, for a 24-month, they're hovering around 7 cents per therm. So, but it does fluctuate. I haven't brought a contract to the board yet, because I'm waiting for things to settle down, so.
So, I hear you say that I got lost in the oil burning thing here. Your gas and diesel, you expect it's going to be $3,000 less, and I missed the reason why.
I didn't give it yet.
Okay, all right.
That's the question.
I thought maybe we got sidetracked. I thought maybe
Okay.
I missed it.
So, last year going into this, I was working off of another person's budget and his projected costs, and I had no working knowledge with such stuff. So I left it alone. This year, our crews have been working nonstop with the machinery. I do remember the reason being that we had new equipment and they were going to be used more, so we needed to increase our fuel line. That's not the case. We've been working our machines routinely every day, and we are still so under budget.
Yeah.
Why not reduce it? And I don't foresee using $3,000 or $4,000 from now to the end of the year in that line. There's some speculation as to why we haven't, but I'm not going to go into that. The numbers are what they are. So I'm just choosing to make that $3,000 to $1,000 reduction. And I might be able to fine tune it even more next year, but it's a work in progress. And so I feel comfortable with that number now. Next year I might be able to even reduce it even more.
The
But-
fuel markets are really volatile.
Fluctuating,
What's
sure.
good right now?
So a little cushion is good, but not a big cushion. I don't want to have money.
No, I get that. I
wasted.
get that. Nor do I.
Yeah. The increase in the decrease in the radio communications, again, that was working off of another person's numbers for budget. I actually just recently purchased the radio, and it was only $900 because we get government contracting for that. And it's $150 for installation. So I had chosen to reduce that to $1,100 going into next year for next year's radio replacement, because I won't need the $1,500. being that it's a government contract, I don't foresee it going up much higher than the 900 that it is this year. The increase in the equipment purchases is due to the extra wear and tear on our lawnmowers, the X-Mark, the industrial mowers that we have. I have to start preparing for maybe a replacement or a larger overhaul. The X-Mark is going on 15 years old now. So, and I don't know if you remember, but last year I put in $1,500 worth of work into the hubs. We're going to have a catastrophic failure here fairly soon. It's inevitable. No matter how much we take care of these machines, they are going to wear out. We're either going to have a major overhaul, a motor, or an engine, or a complete replacement. And I just
What do
like to
they
be.
generally worth? What's the
The next
cost
one,
to get
well, it
one?
depends. You can get one for 6,000. You can get one for 15,000. Depends on the attachments that you get with it.
Yeah, so one that's, 15 years old
Yeah.
is worth nothing.
Oh no, it's still worth $3,000 or $4,000 all day long.
Okay.
I wouldn't look to add on. I would look to trade in what we have, if possible, to reduce the cost and use what we have in the budget to replace, to buy new.
I didn't know you could do that with that.
Hmm?
What's the status of the Hustler Raptor? Zero
Um,
turn.
We're still working it every day, but that machine isn't used as much as the X-Mark because it's slower, it's not as efficient. It's used at the ball field, and it's used in some locations at Riverfront Park. It's just not as utilized as the X-Mark is, which might actually add life to that machine. So I would actually be looking at the X-Mark to be replaced sooner. Everybody loves to use the Cadillac. I mean, that's the nature of the beast.
So my understanding, the 3,000 is to purchase a new X-Mark?
Go towards the new purchase, or
So bank it away.
bank it
So
Like
away.
a
why aren't we
reserve.
banking that in our reserve fund?
Well, that in
Because that
conjunction
won't
with.
bank it.
Well, no,
It doesn't
not
get
banking.
banked
No,
here, it's
not
gonna run
banking.
out.
Using that in conjunction with selling what we have and using,
Right, so
Trading
the
it in
intent
towards-
is to use that towards the purchase of
yes,
a new
use
mower.
towards, or a major overhaul. If we choose, if I lose an engine in that machine, it would be all of the $3,000 to replace the engine.
Right,
and
but
transmission.
so you have a repair line,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna turn the page, but budget we got for October 3rd, and 12,000 in the equipment maintenance and repair.
So that would be under the repairs, correct.
So 3,000 is in
Equipment purchases.
purchases.
So that was the intention. It would go towards
So
buying of a new
If you don't
one.
need to buy one, we would be transferring that up to repair.
No, it would stay there. If I don't have to buy a new one,
And you're gonna repair the other one, we transfer it to repair.
well, yeah, I suppose we could, sure. If we needed to. I mean, it's
So
there.
we could, because that's the idea.
But there's no, until it actually happens, I don't know what course of action we'll
That's
have
right,
to
so
take.
I'm getting through yours, either, it could go in either one.
Right.
Sure.
So, I like it in that it's more transparent. And we've had this discussion.
Okay.
That's just me though.
I don't know, it seems like we're gonna either buy a new piece of equipment or we're not.
Yeah. Sounds like he's gonna baby it and see if he gets another year out of it.
Well,
And raise and appropriate $3,000.
the fact, either a repair over $1,500 or a replacement over $1,500, I would have to come to you and discuss it first anyway. And at that point, we would put everything on the table and figure out which is the best course of action to take. So
And you-
I just wanted to show something somewhere for that purpose.
Why wouldn't this be in your plan to replace in your assets and your
It's not
10-year?
that big of a purchase.
Well, if it's
I-
$15,000, why wouldn't it be?
Well, that was on the extreme side. I mean,
Oh,
if you
okay.
get all the bells and
Okay.
whistles.
That.
Got it.
Um, okay. the $4,000 reduction in subcontractors. I honestly don't know why it was at the $9,000 mark. I'm assuming that it was because, well, I don't want to assume. I'm thinking back to when I put this together. I think I was going to be utilizing more outside contractors because I wasn't sure if our crew was going to be able to handle a lot of the work that we're doing. The street sweeping and the catch basin cleaning, things of that nature. And the guys actually did a lot of the street sweeping, which made our street sweeping bill only $1,000 instead of the $3,000. So there was a lot of figuring out over this past year. And going forward, I would like to keep $1,000 for street sweeping and $4,000 for catch basin cleaning, just in case I do have an outside company come in to do that. That's why that number is at $5,000. And I reduced it $4,000 from what was in there previously. Because everything else we're able to handle in-house. The other thing I'd like to point out is the signs and safety equipment. I've always had a hard time with purchasing signs for our roads and signs for our work construction areas, things of that nature, but not having a clear place to put it within my budget. I've never had the ability to buy a sign and say, okay, it's going to go there in this line. So I had asked him where we could put it. So going forward, if I need to buy a sign, whatever it's for, whether it's no parking, whether it's construction zone, whether it's street signs, replacements, stop signs, things of that nature, I know that I can purchase it and plug it in here into my budget, and there's no question where that money came from. And it does align with safety. That's why we chose to put it there.
Good idea.
Last but not least, the parks. We reduced that $13,180. That's what we had figured out to be roughly the labor cost, if the work was hired out. And again, that's still a work in progress, because this was my first year taking over maintenance there and what we need to purchase and things of that nature. So I wanted to reduce it by at least the labor, because I know that we've absorbed that within the department. So that was pretty cut and dry. You know, we're not charging that out anymore, so I wanted to reduce it by at least that much. The materials and regular maintenance items,
If we were
that's still a problem.
absorbing it, how can you just not, how can you deduct it?
Because it's already in his labor.
It's already in my labor, my daily routines, which is in the labor.
So, but why aren't you deducting it from your labor instead of the
Because
parks
it's-
and grounds maintenance?
Because I'm not reducing it from the overall labor pool.
But you didn't have a parks and maintenance before.
I didn't.
You didn't have to increase his labor.
No,
due to
it's just-
taking over the
It's just been
yard
incorporated in
maintenance.
my daily duties. So it's
So
just
there's
there.
nothing to reduce.
Also, if I may, if
I'm
the
not, I'm
board recalls,
confused here.
the 16,180 was transferred from the Parks Commission budget to Public Works.
Mhm.
So that was the amount of money allotted for the contracts that were in place and some other things attributable to Riverfront Park. So when that transfer was moved into Public Works, they already had the capacity utilization to handle the work at the park. So this is a reflection of what was originally budgeted, and now you're seeing the savings to taxpayers by the Public Works group being able to, absorb that work in their schedule, and but allotting for a certain amount of repair, maintenance, supplies.
So we're taking on the entire responsibility and Parks doesn't pay for it because we're absorbing it in the town's budget.
Because Parks already
Parks
gave
didn't
that
pay for
money.
it before, the town's budget always paid for it, it was just.
Taxpayers have been paying for it all
Always.
along.
Well, I get that, I get
Well,
that,
I
part.
get-
I'm just, right.
So we'll be raising, how many thousands of dollars less, 13,000? That we wouldn't, because we'd have spent that and getting
Outside
whoever,
company
yeah, outside, now we've absorbed that cost.
That's right.
You would have spent the 16,
So
Are you sure we even need the $3,000?
yes.
who has control over this?
That's why I was talking about, this is still a work in progress. I mean, there's still 3,000 left in that line.
Does that go back to the Parks or does that?
No, that stays within my budget to buy
Well,
materials.
who has control over that, though? If we're absorbing Parks work in the Public Works Department, who has control over Public Works doing Parks Department work?
The park commissioner.
The supervisor of the
I'm
Public
just
Works
talking
Department.
money today.
Yeah.
But I think that's a different discussion.
It's a different, totally different discussion.
I'm just talking
Well,
money
we're
today.
talking
I'm
about
trying-
who's controlling the money now. I'm
Well,
talking about who's
The Board of
controlling the money.
Selectmen have always controlled the money once the budget is approved, always. The park commissioners no longer show that appropriation within their portion of the selectmen's budget. It is now shown in Public Works.
In-
What you're looking at now, as I understand it, is the maintenance portion, which
Yes.
really has never
And,
been done of the infrastructure.
I can honestly say that we will not need the $13,000 because we're already doing it within my other budget.
And you do not have to hire
And
a
outside,
part-time
no.
person to help you do.
And did you have extra money this year that you did not use from the Parks?
Extra money.
Well, did you only use $13,000 this year? And they gave you $16,000?
I didn't use $13,000.
He's used 132.
That 16,180 is within the selectmen's budget. It was obviously not used by
Where did
the
it come
park
from?
commissioners. It came from the park commissioners
Okay.
portion of
We
the selectmen's
And
purchased-
he's saying that he has 3,000,
Let
that
me.
he didn't use it.
Okay, we purchased about $700 worth of bark mulch.
Mhm.
There was about $600 of water used for pressure washing. There was about $150 in diesel fuel for the pressure washer because we use heat for that, and that's diesel fuel. Not to mention, the fertilizer and the herbicides that I'll be purchasing next year. So there's a lot of cost there that isn't reflected in this. So I need at least the $3,000 to go into next year so that I can further fine tune where that budget is going to be next year.
Okay.
Actually, I
Well,
have
you
a
have
question
had a
about that.
conversation with the
3,000.
park commissioners about what infrastructure maintenance needs to be done by Public Works and what they may have to subcontract out.
What, can you specify what you mean by infrastructure? Because when you say infrastructure, I'm
The pier,
thinking,
everything other than dirt and plants.
We need to
The piers,
figure
the
out what,
walkways, the rails, the buildings, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah,
we need to
per-
figure out what Public Works is doing for Parks
In-
and who owns
Mhm.
the responsibility and accountability for that. Is it Parks or is it Public Works? Because if it's Public Works, it's under the purview of the selectmen. We need to figure
No.
that out.
Well, I think
That's
a
another
conversation
time.
we should have after this.
I'm saying this is a conversation we need to have after it, but it is a conversation that we need to have.
okay.
Kevin, I had a question.
Shoot.
So the $3,000 in your talking about you gotta start doing some fertilizing and stuff like that. Do you need to buy an attachment or anything, you know, to help you spread that fertilizer?
We actually have an attachment that is a tow behind
Oh, man.
at the garage already.
So you're all set with
Yeah, all
that?
set with
Ready
the
to
application,
go?
sure. Yeah, and the liquid application, we have we already have a couple of those units as well, so we're already set with the equipment needed. Yeah.
Can't think of anything else?
I have a question for the board. Under the last section, sanitation, down bottom, 4th year of a 5th year, 5-year contract, are we gonna be investigating potential alternatives?
Can I chime in?
Sure.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I would like to entertain taking it over. With the amount of money we're spending in that, absolutely. Unless another company can come in and really shine some light.
I just look at the cost of the recycle truck is the same as it's a little more than the trash, and it's running half the time. That's all.
So,
Oh, yeah, definitely a lot to be discussed and thought about. Yeah.
so you put these numbers together too on recycling, sanitation stuff?
No, I did not do that. That was Tim. That's all on the contract still.
So
Contract.
Tim's gonna field those.
Yep.
The only other thing that I wanted to mention was the increase in the uniform line, and that was, it's a certain percentage each year for the 3-year contract with the uniforms. That's where that $412, I think it is, comes from.
So it won't matter,
$414.
it won't matter if you have employees come and go
No, it's based on the number of employees that we have.
at any given time.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're happy with the uniforms
Yes.
themselves
Yeah, I
and
believe so.
the service as well?
Service has been impeccable. Yeah.
Everybody wearing their uniforms?
Yes, for the most part.
Make a motion, we accept the Public Works
Can we have time to study this before we jump into a motion to
proposal.
accept?
I wasn't gonna accept the budget, I was just gonna accept the proposal,
Yeah, like a little time to, so,
whatever.
well, yesterday I had a budget of $627,889.
I'll keep my mouth shut the rest of the night and then
Even
we'll
though
be
we
all set.
reduced the 6,000 in parks to 3,
Just get shut up.
we still have a higher budget. And I'm not quite, I mean, I appreciate the review, but I really have to kind of digest, figure out why it's still up. And didn't want to blame it on just the 3,000 for the lawnmower. But that's just me. I take this very seriously.
Guess I don't.
Well, like I said, you just seem to be annoyed that I wanted some time, so I was explaining to you why.
You said that it was higher?
So yesterday, budget I was looking at, right?
Yeah.
Am I looking at the wrong page? No, this is one that I highlighted. 627,889, that's from October 3rd.
I've got that right.
And now today, 10/31, it's 633,472. So yesterday it was down by 19,891, now it's only down 14,308.
I feel like I can provide you with a list of changes.
Well, I can see the changes, I can compare them, but I didn't want to take the time tonight, out of an already getting busy schedule. I mean, we can approve the entire budget to save time rather than each single line, right? I mean, it's just me, if you guys want to go ahead, that's fine.
What do you mean by each, the entire budget, you mean the whole municipal budget?
Yeah.
What are you talking
Let
about?
me get it done, we can do it either line by line, or, I mean, section by section, or,
If I may, I can tell you what the major change was. is of 10/3, we didn't have health insurance
I'm still gonna
rates.
want to study it.
Oh, of course, but as of 10/3, we didn't have health insurance rates, and as of now, we do. So this reflects what our current health insurance plans
But like I said, let's just do you guys, if you want to approve
Well,
it tonight, you go right
Just a
ahead.
proposal.
I just think it would be a good idea to make sure that if we have any questions for Kevin, to try and get as much of it out, and so we don't keep bouncing back and forth with them unless it's something that was an avoidable question. Anybody have any more questions for Kevin at this time? Thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Great budget, lots of work into it, a lot of thought.
I take it serious.
For more than just a short while. Looks great, thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
I'm sure the taxpayers will be happy to see that you're watching.
Yeah, I just want to echo those comments about Kevin. Your Public Works Director is probably one of the more detail-oriented people when it comes to money and his budget and being conscientious and really studying the effects of different things. And he's often in my office and looking at things, so kudos to him. It really does make a difference, and I think it reflects in his budget. So I have a few things to review with you. One, John, I'll hand you that, unless you've found your packet.
No, I didn't.
Okay. So the first item is the town clerk tax collector's budget. Last week, the Selectman Dawson had questions for the town clerk tax collector, and at one point we had her on the agenda for this evening, but and this was based on the training and dues line, and then I was told earlier today that I guess your questions had been satisfied, that she had answered them.
My
That she
comment to
didn't need to
her
appear.
was, I was all set, but I didn't know if the rest of the board had asked for her attendance and that she needed to talk to whoever put her on the agenda.
She talked to me and she said that she didn't need to be on the agenda. So I,
Let me tell you what I said to her.
Well, what,
Did we request last week that she?
yes, I believe the answers could not be
If the answers weren't available
questions, yeah.
for Selectman Dawson on training and dues.
well, what was the answer?
Kevin, I mean, Tim is about to announce the answer.
Oh.
Well-
Envelope, please.
Well, so in her training and dues line, that includes her conferences, the required conferences, and some additional conferences. Part of the question was, what makes up that line? And not everything in these notes is a complete, detailed, itemized list of what makes up the number. And I think that was one of the questions. And then the other was whether the deputy takes part in these events. And sometimes these are the same thing in finance. You have sort of these regional things that pop up, and they might be $35 or $50. And it depends on what they're talking about, what the session is about, that it might apply to the deputy, it might apply to the town clerk tax collector. So her answer was that it depends on what's being offered, is which person would attend, and that that she doesn't know in advance what these conferences are going to cost either. I mean, she's got a ballpark idea, but it could change from year to year depending upon where they're holding it, how many lunches or dinners they're having, sessions, that sort of thing. So that was that. Am I correct? Was that pretty much her answer to you on those? So in any event, I think probably the bigger item here is, as I mentioned before, she's asking for a 3% increase in wage, and that would be from $62,504 to $64,382. The deputy's wage is calculated based, as you know, all these blue shaded items in the budget are calculations from current wages and benefits. taxes, that sort of thing. And then the big item this year in all these election lines, just as a reminder, when we look at next week, when you look at the moderator's budget, you look at the supervisors of the checklist budget, you look at the administration election registration line, they're all big because we have 4 elections. And there's a lot of money plugged in there for each group because of the number of elections and the activities that have to take place. Yes.
What's interesting here is if you look 16, which would have been a big year, was 33.58, and then 18 went up to 35, yeah, and then 35.67 and 18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that there was additional programming required for the I believe that was the AccuFund, if that's where that is. I believe that's, yeah, the coding. I think there was additional coding required that year for some reason.
Okay.
And that's not something we can control, the state tells us, and that may have been the year we had the snowstorm and the delay in the election, or the,
Yeah,
some were, some weren't. Was that the year?
I think so.
Every
But-
time the machine is used, it has to be coded.
But it's a monopoly. There's one company that does it, and you're required to use them, and you pay what they send you as an invoice, and that's pretty much it. And then I think one of the really big pluses here, and this is one of these historical things, the deed research. This is a line that back maybe about 8 years ago would have been $6,000, $7,000 for this deed research line, and this company that she's been using for many years now, it just is very efficient, very inexpensive, and is very easy for her to work with. And I mean, I think that's one of the big successes that she's had in finding them and working with them, because it's really kept our costs down. So that, in a nutshell, is her budget. The request is $135,077. And I would imagine, as has been done in the past, there's always some discussion about her salary, how that should be reflected at the budget committee recommended, and how that should be reflected for the selectmen's recommended. And I'll leave that for you to decide at a later time how you'd like to do that. And if you're ready, we can move on to information technology. It. That's right. Another item appropriate for Halloween. Cousin It, the movie It, what have you. So in general, this is going up 2.6% this year, and the increase is due primarily to one overreaching item that we can't get around, which is Microsoft is ending support for Windows 7 in 2020, and I've just about completed all the changeover at the PD. I have just a few remaining systems to finish, and in Town Hall, our systems are in general older and have been, parts and pieces to keep them running longer. Not that it's a bad thing, but when I've talked to, in fact, I had a call today with someone from a technology company who was querying me why we would be buying something that's 4 years old that I can get for half price. For $250, I can get an i5 with 6th generation processor, 8 gigs of RAM, 500 gig disk, including a Windows 10 Pro license for $250. And they're asking me, well, why would you want a 4-year-old machine? And my answer was because we're replacing, in some cases, 8-year-old machines. And if the machine is working, and in some cases you have to look at the application, what someone's using it for. For the hosted systems that we're using, they do not have they are not a strain on the system at all. So only for those applications that we run internally on our server, say our accounting systems, up front in the town clerk tax collector's office at the counters, with Avatar or assessing, that sort of thing requires a little beefier system, but other ones where people are working on minutes, they're working on documents, things like that, these processors are spending hundreds of lifetimes waiting for somebody to finish a document in terms of processing lifetimes. It's just incredible, if you're to look at the application of how much power we have even in a 4-year-old system compared to what we're doing with it. So I have no qualms about putting something in as long as it's, it's a reputable manufacturer and I can get parts for it if something goes wrong. And I've had very good luck with our sources to date. We've had a few issues here and there, generally power supplies, things of that sort. But that's what we're looking at. So there are a number of older systems that I've got to replace here, and I'm looking at between 7 and 8 systems. I haven't decided on one of them yet. And that will take us, and that's in conjunction with that network, the network changes I discussed last week. So this will be ongoing through February of next year, preparing and getting ready for it. And we will have some time once the updates officially end to be able to cut over, but I'll be ready. And there are requirements that certain things I'll be doing first pertaining to this change, and those are the ones that deal with more secure information, say up front in town clerk tax collector's office. But in any case, that's the big project for 2020.
Tim?
Yes.
On some of the equipment, are we prepared or going forward with anything with fiber optic? Do we need different modems or switches to cover for that if we do, so we can switch it over and get it in the building?
We're prepared for it, and I can't tell you, I must spend every 5 months, probably about a week of my time off and on talking to all these vendors again. There's just no competition. We have no competition here. It's all the same people. It's Consolidated Communications. It's First Light Fiber. It's Genuity. I mean, there's a handful of them that come through here, including Atlantic has a fiber option as well. But none of them are very cost effective right now. I can tell you that at the new police building, that is in the plan. And I'm almost at a stage where I can justify the cost for the police department as it is now. But it would just be wonderful if Comcast, that's looking at Laconia, would just go right along Route 3. And I mean, we're seeing prices here that are probably about 3 times higher than similar fiber connections in Concord. So, that's the kind of thing we're dealing with. There's just no competition.
It just hasn't come to town really.
It really hasn't. But to answer your question, aside from just one piece of hardware at a location, a drop, that's the only thing that we're missing. We have everything else that would work fine in that environment. So, and I've looked at multiple configurations of this, whether it's a multi-drop or a hub and spoke, if you will, or even an ELAN, which is a hosted fiber network through the supplier, and all of them are unfortunately just very expensive.
Thought they were running fiber at a North Country initiative a few years ago. And it was running right along the highway, and it was supposed to come up to Tilton and go in both directions.
Oh, fiber's right out on the street here.
Yeah, and how are we missing this?
Well, we don't qualify in that catchment area for the grant to take part in that. And Jeannie had looked into that as well when she came. We're just not in that geographic area. there is fiber right on this, right outside in front of us here. You know, it goes, I can tell you where all the little hubs are for it, but it's the cost to connect.
They won't even let residents connect until it's not available.
Right, right.
So it could be right in front of your house.
Yep.
And everybody else using it.
Yeah.
Say, no, we don't have it available in your area.
At some,
While you're looking at it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's frustrating. So in any event, just to get back to the budget, so the hardware is primarily related to these system upgrades, but then I've also got some money for other replacement parts. I've had an inordinate amount of backup power supplies fail this year, probably because it coincides with when I originally put them in. They're sort of getting to end of life, and where we can replace the battery packs in them. In some cases, you can buy the entire thing on sale for the same price. So it's just dependent, but every workstation is protected by battery backup of one kind or another, as well as our servers, of course, and phone systems, and network gear, and backup systems. As far as software goes, you may recall that we had twice in terms of our permitting and then work order management, we had utilized end-of-year money to encumber to get into those programs, and so now we have those fully within this budget. We are asking for, again, an additional 3 users for IMC software. We continue to run into situations where we're out of users, and they've got to go through and sort of call and figure out who they can kick off the system. They've gotten pretty adept at that. They're trained in how to do it, and so it requires less of my time to do hands-on. But it's still something that's been going on, and keep in mind we added an officer this year. We also have times when there are, because of scheduling, there's 2 dispatch people during the same shift or half of a shift. I believe that's on either Wednesdays or Thursdays. So we have times when we've got additional people in the office, and they have to find something else to do besides work on the system. But most of their work consists of surrounds this records management system.
When's the last time we've had it?
We haven't. We've brought it up many times and gone back to the drawing board many times.
So I'm still wondering why we would want to pay for extra licenses. I know it's a small thing in the scheme of things, but just for people who can't be bothered to sign out of the system. Because that's the impression I get. They do their work and they get up and they leave. But they don't sign out. And so that license is now in use that somebody else can't use it. Am I wrong?
That does happen occasionally, but then it also happens when there is no one signed in, left in the system, and yet they've got additional needs there. They've brought people in for another shift, one thing or another. It doesn't happen at night or on the weekends. It's typically happening during first shift. They often have an intern working, and the intern is doing data entry for them or things of that sort. So
And
we
how many do they have?
13.
So you're saying that we max out our system?
They do on a regular basis, and this is. We've been able to get by. It's an inconvenience for them. It hasn't been I wouldn't say that it's been an emergency. I don't know of any situations where they were, there was any issue due to the fact that it was more inconvenience and loss of productivity. It held somebody up from getting out the door maybe to go into a cruiser, or it held somebody up because they had to finish a report before they could get on the road, or, you know, and then they had to figure out, well, who can they kick off? Who's out on the road now? Who's in that car? Okay, so we can kick this one off. Make sure that, you know, everything's saved first. And it's all that sort of thing that sort of surrounds this, you know, this thing. The other thing too is that if I personally believe with the if the building passes, we are going to need additional licenses, because they're going to, and I'll talk about the scanning, but they're going to have a need to really inventory all the evidence in a, it's an opportunity, I should say, for them to inventory this evidence so that it takes less time to manage down the road, and they can spend more time on police work rather than searching for things, recording things, and that sort of thing. So the chief could probably speak better to that, but we have discussed at length that were this to go through, we would probably, and that's why I'm discussing it now, seek to modify this budget to increase it for scanning and the equipment for it. So it's about a total of $3,200 between software and hardware, and that would give them the ability to make sure that everything is inventoried prior to going into the new building and into their
They have no inventory of their
visuals.
evidence right now that they need to put
There-
a barcode
well,
on it?
So this is.
I guess that's a chief thing.
It is, there is a module that will, this module that we would be purchasing would do so much more than what they have the capability of now. And part of what they're dealing with now is 20 years worth of, and that's 10 years beyond the chief's work, of different ways of handling the inventory, perhaps, different ways of categorizing it, cataloging it, storing it. There's inventory in this basement, evidence inventory in the basement in a locked area, secure area, and they have evidence in 2 other locations. So there's, and some of this stuff is old, you know. So I'm just saying that may be something that we would have to look at, you know, making an amendment at town meeting, or readjusting my budget in some way to account for that.
What did these 3 additional users cost by themselves? This is PD Tri-Tech IMC with 3 additional users.
Right, so it is.
What is just the 3 additional users?
It's just under $1,100 a year for, so it's $750, and then the balance of that is support.
So that is the total cost if we add 3 users?
Yes, the
Okay.
9551.
I didn't know what PD Tri-Tech IMC
Oh, I'm
was.
sorry, yes, so that's police
It'll
departments.
cost us over $9,000 to have 3 new users.
Right now, we're paying $84.13, I believe.
So if we said no to 3, not having 3 additional users,
We could take it $1,100 something, yes.
What was the additional cost for,
It's $750 plus maintenance, so.
so that's on top of the 1,100?
No, that's
Support.
that's total. I can tell you exactly. It's roughly 1140, so take 750 off of that, so you're looking at 300 and 340. Is that right? No, so that's 440 in maintenance. So the 750 would be a one-time, you know, in other words, we're not paying for that each and every year, but we're paying for the additional maintenance every year thereafter. All the other modules that we have are listed there. We sometimes do get slight adjustments from Avatar or MuniSmart.
iWorks is $2,000.
For the work order management, yes.
And that's the entire, that's what we would pay iWorks this coming year total.
That's correct.
Okay. I've never personally seen an iWorks report. I
Yeah.
hear that some people aren't up to speed on the system or can't figure it out. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just my perception, but is this a worthwhile thing? I know the concept is, but the application of it.
I think so. I'm not aware that, no one's brought to my attention that it's not, but we enter, there are multiple people that can enter the work orders, but primarily it would be one of 3 people. And then those work orders, like I went in the other day and entered one for a light out in my office that was flickering. And there's a whole series of work orders, and our public works director goes through them. He prioritizes them. This was, of course, a low priority thing I had, and he's using it, I think, very effectively. We have more capability as he has more time available to track costs, to track materials and things like that, which he has indicated to me that he wants to do. But in terms of, I think if there is any issue with that, it's probably because people are used to being able to send an email, or they're used to one thing or another, and he does take his emails and enters work orders from them. I know he's done that in the past.
What about departments like land use? Are they utilizing the system?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, the
Code
permitting,
enforcement?
absolutely, yeah. Very much so.
Catherine, are you on the system yet?
No, we never had time to train me.
And the building inspector doesn't use it either.
Oh, he does?
Yes, he does.
Extensively, yeah.
Because, was that the one, he was going to be up to speed in 3 months?
Oh, yeah, no, I sat down with him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's all done.
No, I sat down with him, we worked out some reports for him that he liked, and
You
we went through
customized
the
it for
training.
him?
Yep, I mean, it's very, a lot of these things are just so very customizable. You really almost have to kind of narrow down what it is you really need to make it easier. But no, they use it extensively. The land use technician enters a lot of information into it. The code enforcement officer retrieves it remotely as well as here in the office.
That's great.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I think it's.
Well, I'm glad.
And also, I mean, not only is it doing permits, but it's also doing code complaints. So there's listing and status of code complaints that he follows up on. But if maybe that's something. I wasn't aware of anything with the work order management.
That was just my perception, and I wanted to get it straightened out, and apparently it is.
And I think some of this, to be honest, is a new system takes not only time to think about and work with using it, it takes time to get the training, it takes time to sort of take what you were doing and figure out how you want to integrate it. We had a slow start with permitting, but that's really doing very well. I think we had a fairly good start with work order system, but a lot of it has to do with the resources that we have available, to work on it. So,
I think this is Tim giving us a budget for IT and asking him questions on whether or not a department head uses a particular software is not supposed to be in his purview to answer that. I think if we have that question for the department head, we should have the department head in and have him answer that question. It's not up to Tim to be answering that question for us,
I
for him.
understand what you're saying. My question is designed to, is the system in use?
You're asking him if
Last I
they
knew
use
it
it.
wasn't. So I'm glad it is.
So if we can move on to services, so we're looking at our 3rd year payment on the 5-year contract with Taser for the body cameras. As far as I know, they've been very good with the replacements. We have had a couple of little network issues. From time to time, they that were very easily solved. Their support's very good. And if you've been in the squadron, you've probably seen the bank of receptors that these body cameras go in, and the officers use them. As far as I know, I don't have access, nor would I have access to the evidence side of things. But I do make sure that they've got the full data flow. So as these body cameras are charging, they're also transmitting data.
You have sufficient cloud storage?
They do.
That
There's
was the question.
Yeah, in fact, if anything, I think they need to review their retention policies on some things, because when you first start out with something, oh, we can keep this for 60 days. But in reality, maybe you don't need to keep it for 60 days. And some things were set to a year long. So I think, that's something I've recommended to the chief and captain, that they look at see what other communities are doing, if there's a standard
Before
for
it's
retention.
Too much to call for.
Well, and they have maxed out the storage at one point, and so that was my recommendation to them to review their retention policies. So
Now, we have to up that? We have
I
to
don't-
pay extra fees? If we max it out, we have to...
if we were to add storage over and above what our contract provides today, but I really believe this is easily handled through culling some of the
Couple
things that
points.
didn't need to be kept. But again, I don't have access to that. But from the discussions I've had with them, I think we would be fine.
So
We're not
we're
going to
good
need
with
to
the
add
storage.
storage. No. They also have the ability to offload storage too. So sorry that. Then we have our internet costs today are roughly $37.60, and I do set aside money for a consultant every year, and that's primarily for our firewalls and servers, and that's for here as well as at the PD. They're going to be here on November 11th. They're going to be assisting me, so that hopefully we can knock that out before the next day. We have our G Suite, which is Google Apps across the town, which is, aside from a few glitches we had this year that were self-induced, it's been working very well for us, and we're doing more and more collaboration in the administrative offices with Google Docs and spreadsheets, and it's really been very, very handy, especially where you have remote. You've got the public works director down there, you've got the PD. It saves us a lot of time, I believe, and it reduces the redundancy of having to email documents back and forth. You can just share them and work on them. Our radio traffic recording maintenance, so that is the Acorn system. That is what records all of the PD's radio traffic, so that if there's ever an incident or something and they need to go back and listen to it. And we'd gotten that, if you recall, following the Kay Jewelers incident, and that was a recommendation from the FBI. I do budget for phone system maintenance, although we've not had to spend money on phone system maintenance. Our support company has been very good. I did have to buy one phone this last year, but that was at the Public Works, at the police department. And I did have to buy some phones here, but I bought them off of eBay for the town hall system when we added employees here. And parts for the system as well. So we also have, through Dell, we have Next Business Day hardware service for the servers, and that's for 2 servers for annual maintenance. This is the most cost-effective level. If you were to go up to a 24/7 on-site, you wouldn't like me very much. It would be a big number. So this handles the most catastrophic items where we would have to replace the server. In a situation where we're going to be down, we're going to be down. And a 24/7 contract where it can pay for part of a new server isn't necessarily going to help us, the amount of money we would spend on it as opposed to the next business day. So, so we continue to keep service contracts on the servers. Those are the only items that we keep service contracts on for the network equipment. We also have the new copiers, as you're aware, so we don't have copier contracts any longer. We have a company that we're using for time and materials for preventative maintenance, and I've budgeted $900 for those copiers. And keep in mind, these are new to us, relatively new to us, so I don't know really what to expect as yet. But so far, the copiers that we've had here have been very low maintenance. I've had one issue at the PD, and we've solved that. We also have our cloud storage backup through Amazon Web Services, S3 service. And then we also purchase, as you're aware, Alert Tilton contact credits. So depending upon the usage of Alert Tilton, it could be more or less. Generally, we've been spending a little bit less. The problem for me is when the police department sends out the alerts, sometimes they will blanket either multiple times or they will blanket a larger target audience just by saying everybody, and where it might, it could be narrowed down a little bit more. So I'm a little more stingy with the contacts than others, but we have sufficient money there for it. I'm not concerned about going over budget with that, and it's still much less expensive than the alternative. It does require me doing database maintenance, so anytime we send out an alert, I will receive back not only call logs from whatever alert was sent out from the PD or here, but I also have a form set up that anybody that wants to delete their information, change their information, comes to me. And after that incident at Lockmere Circle, I must have had 55 additions the next day. So probably a number of people living in that area when the helicopter was hovering over. And I spent quite a little bit of time doing updates that time, but generally speaking, it's not very much. But I've created a database internally, and then we upload that to the company that we use for this. Lastly, we have, so for communications, this is simply the effect of how many cell phones, how they're distributed, air cards in the cars. And then we have 3 monthly stipends, one for the Public Works Director, one for the Town Administrator, and one for me, of $20 apiece towards our phone expense. And we have not yet completed the transition for our welfare director, and that has been dependent upon her to transfer the line, but she's had use of the phone from the time that the board had wished for her to have that. You can also see what we spend in our voice over IP lines, our town hall lines, and then the PD's backup lines in case we lose internet connection. Lastly, in supplies, I have reduced this line some. I'm going to be taking offline 2 of our 3 color printers that are old. They're now 10 years old, and use them for parts for the one remaining user that uses one of those printers. And we'll be using the color copier downstairs for color prints, and it's been just phenomenal. And I can buy supplies for that copier, actually even a little less expensive than what it costs to provide supplies for those color printers.
Saves electricity.
Yes, yeah, and the prints, the quality out of that color printer is just remarkable. The color copier, I should say. And if you recall, that was a free item to us. So that, in a nutshell, is the IT budget. And again, were it not for Microsoft's sunsetting Windows 7, we would probably have a lower budget this next year, or a flat budget. Anyone have any questions for me?
That's it, thanks, Tim.
Okay.
The info technology part. You see have some other news for us.
Yes, I do.
Special news for the occasion.
So, we're on to tax rate. So I have in your, let me hand you one of these, John. So I have, if you all have this tax rate setting worksheet, looks like this. So what we're looking at here, at the top of this sheet, I'm showing the three things. First of all, this is all on the left-hand side, the 2019 tax rate information. This is without fund balance, without the use of fund balance. So our, and you may have seen my email, but our rate without any use of fund balance would be $22.34 per thousand. You can see where our appropriations are. This is all from DRA. And then you can see I've put in the 2018 tax rate information. And then, and it's, even though our rate has gone down because the equalized value has gone up by 108 million or so, it's really, to look at the effect, the net effect change, you really have to look at an appropriation change. Because what that's saying is that you know, how much more or less are we raising and appropriating in tax? Because the other part of it, the tax rate and the equalized value, are like a teeter-totter. And so really, we are looking at an increase of $318,000, and that's primarily due to the fact that at town meeting, the land purchase was put into the operating budget, you know, to pay for that in cash and not not take out a note on it. So, so that $318,000, that is the net effect to us based on our estimated revenues through the end of the year, as well as our MS 232 appropriations that were approved at town meeting. So we went from 3.817 million appropriation in 18 to 4.136 million in 19. And that gave us a municipal tax rate of $6.66.
We'll get some audience reaction on that.
So the difference is here, our appropriation for the town went up 8.35%. The county went down very slightly. The local education, in other words, the district local school tax went up 10.29%. The state education tax went down, less than 1%, and fire went up 17.52%. So, and these are the appropriations. So our change in fire, for instance, that 17.5% was $226,463. So we went from 1.29 million to 1.519 million. And one of the things I'm always interested in year to year, you know, how does that apportionment break down between Tilton and Northfield? And I had actually expected our percentage to go up. It actually came down slightly because this is all using a prior year's assessment. So we're actually at a 62.18%, and Northfield's at 37.81%. So we're paying 62.2% of the fire district's budget, and Northfield pays the balance. In that second section there, you can see where our equalized value increased from $512,933 and change up to $620,756,000 and change. And then in 2018, our retained fund balance was 3.8% of our appropriation. My recommendation is to use $175,000 of fund balance, which you can see the fund balance before and after in that center section. So right now, before using any fund balance, we have an unassigned fund balance of $706,865. After the use of this 175, we'd be down to $531,865, and we would have a 3.9% retained unreserved fund balance. On the bottom section here, where you see in the left side use of unassigned fund balance, that's essentially the same table I gave you last week, with the exception of 1 penny rounding on each of these. And then in the second sort of section of columns, where it says full year estimated tax on property valued at, that's where you can see what the effect is on $100,000 property, $200,000 property, and $300,000 property. And then on the far right-hand side, these are your assessments and your taxes based on 2018 and 2019, estimated 2019, based on that 175,000 use of fund balance. And because I know for me, when I'm looking at these numbers, I'm looking at, well, gee, I'm showing a 100, 200, 300,000, and I'm sure just about everybody, including myself, is thinking, well, okay, where do I fit, and what do I have to multiply to figure out, what my tax would be, and how does that relate to what I'm paying now? And not to say that this would be an exercise that would do anything other than give you more clarity into what that means for a taxpayer. So you know what you pay in tax, you know what you pay in tax, and this is just for the primary parcels that show under your names. So the thing to keep in mind here, though, and if I could direct you to that center section where it shows the $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 properties, were we to go from $175,000 to say $250,000, so increasing it $75,000, that $200,000 house or property is only going to see a $24 reduction in tax. And that's because the fund balance only goes against our municipal portion. It reduces our town tax rate portion. And our town tax rate portion is a small percentage. We're at about a little higher than 25%. We're somewhere in the probably 26, 27% of our total appropriation. So it doesn't have as much net effect as one would hope. But the rationale for using $175,000 is as follows. I envision taking $100,000 out of our existing fund balance and then also returning what would have been $75,000 of municipal aid that was approved in this most recent state budget. Now we actually received 71 and change, but it's very likely that we may see the balance of that other 77,000 in the second year. But by returning 75,000 of that money, along with 100,000 of fund balance, I think it makes sense. It also is covering half the cost of that land purchase, so it's defraying that by half, in effect. So my recommendation would be the 175,000 and giving us a total rate of $22.06. I can plug in any number you like, and I can tell you any number that's on the sheet, revised number if you like to. So.
It's hard to determine what a good amount is to keep it on assigned fund balance
So there's a certain percentage that you should keep.
that they think is ideal.
Is a suggested.
And what was that?
Well, so
Seem
So they usually have a 5% as a minimum. The thing is, if you look at our fund balance, and the caveat is that you should have 2 to 3 months worth of fund balance to cover your expenses. But if you look at our municipal appropriation as compared to the total, that 3.9% is based on the total $13.8 million appropriation. So if you're to look at that 531,000 versus our municipal 4.13 appropriation, you know, we're over 10% at that point. And this is increasing our retained fund balance slightly from 3.8 to 3.9 year to year. So it's not decimating our unassigned fund balance, and yet I think there's to me it makes sense to return the municipal aid that we received just recently to the taxpayers, so that they can see that relief, and then also use some of fund balance. And in 2018, we added 206,000 of fund balance in that year. So really what we're saying is we're retaining some and using, retaining half and using half in effect. But you can see where we go, everywhere from the 100,000 to the 300,000, and what those tax rates are, everywhere from $22.18 down to $21.86. And like I said, I can plug in any figure you like.
Tim, if we look at, let's say, not just 2020, but 2021, if the police station was to go through, there's a lot of other things that are not covered under our costs for that we're going for the police station building, other extra costs. Would it be prudent to go and maybe not take as much out this year and plan more for 2021 when we might need to reduce it some more?
I certainly could.
Have you thought about that? And,
I have.
For 2022, which would be probably around when we start construction.
I believe the plan is that the construction would start in April following.
They said they'd be in there by winter.
Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe.
They said.
Yeah.
Why would some of the costs associated with building the police station not be part of the bonding process?
They should. And that's what I was going to say. I would recommend that they be. There may be some incidental items, but anything that is that would be major would be put into that. So all the owner's items, all the construction expense, things of that sort would be in there.
Well, one of the things I was thinking of is, we talked about earlier about adding IMC or software, or perhaps would we even need your conferencing or tables and chairs, all those types of things. And I just want to make sure that after the construction is done, that would start hitting the budget year of 2021, that maybe we might want to start thinking about that and be more prudent on taking out of our.
Well, so what's interesting about this is if you look at the increase in the appropriation from 18 to 19, the 318,000. My first cut at looking at what our financing would be, although it's very premature because there's no final numbers on anything, but it would probably be less than that number. So we're not. Keep in mind, the land purchase was a one-time purchase.
Yeah.
So in 2020, we're not going to have that. We don't have that 350,000. The need to spend that 350,000. So our appropriation will be less just by that amount. In 2021 is likely when our full bond would kick into effect for the first payment. It's generally how it works. The first payment will be in that following budget year. So more than likely it would be less than this amount, this net amount that we're looking at here, the 318. So it would be unusual to use fund balance for something like that. More appropriate would be, you want to have that fund balance set aside so that if you lose a bridge, you lose, road gets washed out. We have some incident somewhere that was unforeseen, that requires an extraordinary expense. And there are provisions in the law and the RSA that allow the town to use that fund balance in certain circumstances, judgments, things of that sort.
I think that 2021 we start hitting a more of a tax spike.
I don't want to say no, but
And
I
that's
mean,
why I was thinking
with a
using
bond-
fund balance for that, as
Yeah.
opposed to, we still have the money for the bridges and emergency
right.
use. Or
certainly
we
could.
have a little bit more of a buffer going into 2021, so that we could use a little more.
Yeah, I'm not adverse
keep
to saving the unreserved fund balance, but I also,
Just want, so the taxpayers are coming out of their mortgages, they're not getting these, hey,
That's right.
this and like that, and then all of a sudden they get hit because it was down 1 year.
right, well, so that's one of the reasons for using this here, because that will defray that one-time expense of the land purchase.
Okay.
It'll defray half of that. So it'll lessen the impact to someone's escrow account, theoretically. And yes, when we do get to a full bond year, there will be an increase, but that would then, hold for the 25 years or whatever the term is of the bond. So there would be a plateau up, if you will,
And it will be,
but it would.
go for 2022 and for
Unlikely, but you probably could, ladder it in, I suppose, or step into it somewhat.
thoughts.
I always look at this in two ways. One is thinking about what can we return to the taxpayer and still provide the town adequate money. In those unlikely events, something happens that that you need to have that fund balance. And then the other is looking at trying to have a stable tax rate, because it not only wreaks havoc on escrow accounts, but also on businesses who are trying to plan and determine what their budget is for the next year and how they're going to plan their budget. So I always see that as a responsibility looking at this, and that's one of the reasons why. Trying to take half of the cost of that land out. But I mean, I'm not opposed to saving the fund balance too. That was just my recommendation, and I'd stick with that. But
175.
yep. But I can plug in any number you like, and with your vote, we can approve it and have it done tomorrow.
The biggest hit is gonna be this year as opposed to next year, because there's two things.
2021.
The land purchase and the increased assessments of people's properties,
That's right.
including
That
the
too.
businesses. This is the biggest increase they're gonna see in a long time. And next year, I mean, they're gonna absorb this because it's taxes, you gotta pay taxes. But next year, the hit is gonna be probably half of what they got hit with this year. And that's even, if I'm looking at these from what your slideshow, you're looking at about $150 to $200, right? For the
What is
police
that?
building, if we go with the police building, because we're speculating.
Oh, but what the rate would be
Yeah.
for it?
You said there'd be approximately $150 to $200, something like that. increase.
Oh, from that, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that was based on an 18 rate, but that's, yes, I would say that's likely, yeah.
But you're looking at these $500 increase.
Well, so and that's the trouble with a reval year.
That's
Because
right.
as you can see from your own assessments, one went down, one practically stayed the same, and three went up quite a bit.
Mine, quite frankly, my property really isn't comparable because they discovered there were some actual errors.
Okay,
If I had noticed it a couple of years ago.
right. But the rationale here is anybody that's under that average increase is probably going to see a reduction. Anybody over the average increase is going to see an increase. That's why you really have to look at the value of the increase of the appropriation, because that's really the only thing you can say apples to apples from 18 to 19. The town budget went up $318,000. We're having to raise and appropriate $318,727 more than we did in 2018, and that's primarily because of the land purchase. Same thing goes for any of those other.
Where's that 318 down?
Right. So you're really defraying. That's what this fund balance is doing. I suppose you could make it 150. You could make it 125.
This is the year to use fund balance. If you're going to soften the blow of property taxes for people, this is the year to do it.
And it's easy to explain that not only are you using 100,000 or half of our fund balance increase from 2018, but you're also returning the municipal aid we received in 2019 to the taxpayers. That was voted on the state budget.
What about $200,000?
So
It's $25,000 to the fund, but it's like money in everybody else's pocket.
right. So if you look on a $100,000 property, it's a difference of $4. $200,000 property, it's a difference of $8, and a $300,000 property, it's a difference of $12.
You can get a meal at McDonald's.
Woo! So that's
So
why.
if you were to make a significant change, you'd have to do something like 275 or 300,000.
And even then, it really, I hate to say it, but it's not a significant change to warrant that amount of fund balance depletion, in my view.
But this is all, these numbers are based on, we still haven't come up with our budget yet, so.
No, this is for our 2019
This is-
tax rate.
This
Yeah.
is the tax rate.
2019
This is,
tax
yeah,
rate.
so what you decide tonight in terms of fund balance, that's the only decision we need. You can vote on whatever number you like, be it 0 or anything else. And then I can finalize it tomorrow with DRA, and we'll have our tax rate set. And once the warrant is available for you.
Make a motion, we go with Tim's.
Well, that's what I'm going to do. I would make a motion that we use $175,000 of
I was
So you can second it.
I'll second it.
I was in the middle of making a motion, and I got cut off, and you
Here's what
acknowledged
happened.
Joe.
Excuse me. I saw one person raise their hand, I heard one person talk. I saw the hand go up first, I called on him. And that's all. I mean, I gotta do it
It
somewhere.
doesn't make any difference to me. By all means, make the motion. I'll second it.
Sad. It's really sad. You say, make a motion, and somebody else cuts you off.
I would request if somebody would raise their hand to make a motion, get recognized. And
If
what
you
happens
raise
at this
your hand and
meeting.
get recognized, it would be
Excuse me.
nice.
Here's what's going on at this meeting, and we all have to be very blunt about this. We have people that just shout out whatever they feel at any given time and argue back and forth. I would appreciate that you would respect my being the chairman and at least get some kind of signal. You can say, hey, if I don't see you, but please, don't continually interrupt
Chair.
each other and jump in them.
I respectfully
Yes.
ask the chair to at least scan the table so that you could see everybody, to acknowledge that Peter and I have our hands raised, because you often do not do that.
In this case, I did. I looked at Joe
In
and
this
I
case,
looked
you did not.
around and I saw Joe. And I called on Joe and then I heard your voice.
Whatever, it
Did
doesn't
you raise
matter.
your
This
hand?
is the third time tonight, so I said, made a motion, and you looked right at me and said, continue, and then
Joe,
you turned
I
to
recognized
Joe.
Joe first. I'm not going to argue.
Me
I
either.
recognize Joe.
Go ahead, recognize Joe.
And if Joe doesn't want to make a motion, then
No, I would make a motion to use the town finance officer's recommended amount of $175,000 of the bond, or of the fund balance in order to lower the tax rate.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on the 175? No discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, so without objection, tomorrow I will finalize that with DRA, and then the next step will be producing the warrant.
Right, and if it's at all possible to get you to come in and sign off on that, we're running into a time crunch to get the tax bills out. We'd like to get you to sign off next week, the week after. I think the town tax collector is going to a conference, so she wants to be able to be here to work with the deputy to get the tax bills out before she leaves, which means that we need to kind of speed up the process for you to sign off on the warrant so we can get going.
That'll be ready tomorrow?
Not the warrant.
Probably Monday.
So after the weekend? Is that okay with everybody? Stop in?
I'm sure.
I'll shoot you an email
Yeah.
and let you know when it's ready. And I'll call you, Joe.
So I also have one thing later for your non-public that I worked on that you requested last week. And one last comment I wanted to make, because I have to tell you, in my 10, almost 11 years here, I had more fun today at a Halloween luncheon that we had, and I think I can speak for everybody that was there. This started out as an idea from the sewer administrator, who is into Halloween every year, and talking to our land use coordinator. And turns out our land use coordinator is pretty crafty. And I can remember telling her at one point when in the interview process, when the town administrator and I had like 5 minutes with her individually, and I was telling her what a fun group we are. Well, boy, I didn't realize that I was talking to, like the instigator of fun. And so she, on her own, went and purchased shirts for us all, and made us all into the 7 dwarfs, which when our 8th dwarf, which was our health officer, came in, kicked one of our dwarfs into Snow White. So, I have pictures, by the way, but I honestly have to say, I'm not usually one that comes out and will participate in something, but it was so much fun. And it was a potluck that we did, and I just can't say enough about the people that put it together, and what a boost it was for morale.
That's great.
Joe?
I gotta know, which one was Dopey?
That was Kim. Yeah, I was at the PD when they were picking names, and I thought for sure I was not going to be happy, and well, literally not happy, and I wasn't not happy, but I was sleepy, which I thought was kind of fun. So a wonderful time by all. It was great. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so the next thing we have, unless there's any more comments on tax rate, I'm done with that. Selectmen's report. And Catherine Dawson, you are first on the list.
Well, the only thing I have is what's going on with the election, choosing when the election place. Chuck and Cindy and I met Tuesday. Jeannie wasn't able to attend, but Chuck did several renditions of how we could lay it out at the community room at Veterans Home. And he's going to go back and tweak it some more. He asked Cindy, and he felt that we really needed to let the superintendent of the schools know that the primary in February was not a good election to move to middle school or anywhere else. So if there was anything he could do to keep it there, we'd appreciate it. So Jeannie was going to take care of that communication. And I don't remember which one of them suggested the voting center at St. Mary's of the Assumption Church on Chestnut Street. I made contact with Father Gagnon, and he's going to try to arrange for us to look at it sometime next week.
It's big enough.
It's big enough. The only thing Claire over there in the office said that handicap accessibility might be an issue, but we needed to look at it.
There is a up the stairs
Right.
part of it.
And there's still an opinion that if we're going to find a permanent location, that we're never going to get boosted out of the Public Works garage, is it? So that's not completely off the table.
Another week?
Probably another week, hopefully they'll get into the Newton Center,
Jeannie?
and Jeannie was going to go
Yeah.
ahead.
So to follow up on Catherine, she asked me to reach out to the superintendent, and I did shoot him an email asking if it was at all possible to have the February election with the idea that going forward, we would find a permanent location for the rest of our elections. I have not heard back from him yet. I just checked my email. She also asked me to talk with Kevin about DPW because there were some concerns about lighting and odors, and Kevin's response back to me was that he plans to remove all the equipment and fuel from inside the shop a few days before the election. All fumes would be evacuated from the building, and the lighting will be better because he plans on installing additional LEDs lights next month. So that's his response to that.
Anything else?
No, that's nothing really going on.
Here,
The
you're
stipend policy, I don't know.
on.
The stipend policy, did you?
Oh,
So,
Jeannie reminded me that she's created a stipend policy that we should look at after the selectmen's reports.
Okay.
I'd asked for it. I think this is
Okay.
probably the third year going I've asked for that, so that we're consistent.
Okay. Peter?
yeah, the True Green accident site, we had DOT look at the wall. Apparently, they didn't look at the areas of the town's concerns, which would be the sinkhole by the box culvert that crosses between the alarm place and the old Staffords, and the other sinkhole that was up close to the intersection. If you look at their plan, they've got two other areas that basically need chinking, so they're trying to get out without doing anything, I think. The box culvert, it's leaching material out so we can pave, and the sinkhole will come back, and eventually it'll pop out. So I don't know if we can get them with someone from the town to point out the areas where we've had problems previously. Or they should talk to District 3, because they were aware.
Is that a direct result of the True Green accident, though?
No, no, but that isn't what we're investigating. It's the integrity of the wall, and any areas that we have issues should be.
Okay, I see what you're
And the
saying.
areas they picked out, there's no problem up above on the sidewalk surface. You know, you've got the stones on top are a little out of level. But the areas where you're losing material, they never investigated.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Oh, excuse me. They looked at what we asked them to look at. So for that, they looked at what we asked them to look at, which was at the bottom. If you want them to look at these other two areas, I'm happy to call and have them come back and look at those. But they did what I asked them to do.
Okay, because what I'm talking about is the whole reason we've never paved it, is we've been holding, and we're coming up on what now, year 4, year 5?
And I've only, it was only when they did the work, putting the capstones back on, that was brought to my attention that there was a problem at the bottom, the foot. And I talked to Jim Cropsey, who was there at the time, and I talked to Kevin, and I talked to the contractor, and that's what I directed.
Okay.
So it's not on them, it's on me.
No, it's on the fact that we've got to all do, you're new also. You weren't here for the discussions of it before, so there's no one to blame.
Peter, do you think perhaps could go down there with some chalk? And, you know,
No, if you-
mark out on the wall, just some chalk, these are the areas, or ask them to inspect the whole length of that wall?
If you want to go down there with me, Peter, and show me what you're talking about, or if Kevin knows, then I can certainly have them come back and take a look.
Catherine, can you?
Yeah.
She's got more time to meet up with you than I do, is all.
I'd be happy to.
Next Tuesday, maybe, when we're gonna meet anyway. Okay.
That's all I have.
If I'm here tomorrow,
Good. Joe,
I can.
you're up next.
I have a question, an observation really. I went, it rained, it's been raining, I went up in the Tree Street, Cedar Street, Linden and what have you, and you know, to be expected, it was kind of mucky and what have you, but one thing I noticed was there were various spots in the street where there were depressions where you could kind of tell where they had put in a lawn, you know, to services basically to a person's house. The areas, there was a couple of them, manholes that they were putting in that looked like they were already kind of subsiding. And it got me to thinking about the bridge up there when I was watching them do that. I was the sidewalk superintendent on that job. That they came in and there was a guy that compacted and compaction tests and whatever. And I just wondered if Rowell's was compacting it or... and the only reason I asked that, because we can smooth it all over and have a nice paved street, but in 2 years, if it keeps compacting, then it's the road's gonna drop down and it's gonna crack and I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe it's just me.
Peter has the answer, probably.
I would hope that the contract would have said fine grade and pave, so that what happens is after all the utilities are done, they come back, do a final grading, come in with the vibratory roller, pack it down, and then they'll come in probably the next day to do the binder course.
I've seen him do that before over on Silver Lake.
So, I and Joanna went over yesterday to see if a comment was made that perhaps Rouse wasn't compacting. Rouse, in fact, Joanna and I had both seen previously that they are compacting with a plate compactor in this. In fact, when we went over yesterday, and I have a picture of it, I didn't print it out because I didn't want to waste the ink, but there was the fellow, was waiting to do another 18 inches or so, but he was waiting for gravel, and you could see that the compactor had gone around it. Now, I can't say I saw the same thing when I was down there for the water district schools. I don't know what they were doing, but knowing Kenny Partridge, I have to think that they were also done in.
So
plate compactor.
basically you're talking about it being just the condition of the road, the water and...
Well, that's what's going to be
Kind
on the
of sort of.
surface. Also, Johanna and I have occasion to talk to the super on the Rouse job, Alex, and they weren't done yesterday. As I said, they were still bringing in gravel to do their finish fine. They're
Well, when
done.
I was there, this is
They were still digging on Linden. They were
just
still
my
digging on
observation, and they were working up
Cedar. Linden,
Linden. They were putting in something up there. I didn't go up there.
yeah, and they were still putting in catch basins
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and I had left a message with sewer commissioner for public works director, then asked him to get in touch with Joanna. If there were any problems or concerns he had, in case he needed us to interview with Rouse, and according to Johanna, he had absolutely no concerns.
Okey doke. That's me.
Anything else? Okay. What else we got? Well, some people might watch this tomorrow, but we did postpone the Halloween and trick or treating until Saturday. As of last night, they were still predicting winds and heavy rains, and discussions with the police chief and that for safety of the children, and that we put off till Saturday night. It didn't rain as hard as we expected,
Yeah,
but Saturday night's gonna be a beautiful night, and I am hoping that right now, everybody instead went over to the Veterans Home, which will greatly enhance their trick-or-treaters over there, and then we'll still have it on Saturday. And that's it for me. Pat?
The seniors at the senior center have asked me to bring forward to the board a proposal to add a handicap space in the front, in the parking. If you're looking at the senior center, to the left, there's one parking space that is not handicap parking, and they would like that to be handicap parking. It's right in front of the walkway. And the reason why we did not do that is because they delivered the Meals on Wheels, and they wanted that left open. But they deliver it differently. They come in the front door. They thought at the beginning of the senior center days that they would go out through the back door and deliver the meals, but they always come through the front door and deliver the meals. So they would like that space to remain like all of the front spaces as handicap. So I'd like you to make a proposal for that to be handicap, and ask Kevin to go up and paint it and put a post. You'd have to put a post there because there's a sidewalk in the front. You can't put it on the railing of the porch.
How many handicap spaces will that give you?
5.
How many total do you have?
5.
No,
We-
I'm sorry, total parking places, just out of curiosity.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I can't answer that right now.
You're sharing parking with the.
We share parking with
facility next door if it's
Right.
available, right?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I can't answer it, because I don't know how many they have.
So you have plenty of parking.
Yeah. Just in the front, they would like it to be handicap.
They're being utilized with the, what, they 4 now? So they're being utilized a lot, and there's
There's 5 spaces up front, there's four handicap, 1 non-handicap.
Do you want that in a motion?
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we make, there's only one more space in the front, right? The other space in the front of the senior center, a handicap space, and instruct the public works director to get that done as soon as he can.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved, unanimous.
There was a discussion brought up about last week that we would think about what the employees had asked about for the Christmas. My vote would be to give them the Thursday and Friday off. Thought a lot about it. I also asked Finance Director, there's no change in monies. There's no extra monies to the town. It's already budgeted for their time. It will make a huge boost in morale. That would be my vote. That's their first option. You've asked them what they wanted.
Do you know what the most favorable one was?
What Pat just mentioned, there were 2 options.
Most
yeah.
popular?
Most popular was that one.
Does that mean we wouldn't have a selectmen's meeting that night, Thursday?
We wouldn't have a selectmen's meeting that night, and also we wouldn't have a Christmas party. That would be in lieu
Right.
of the Christmas party, so it would actually save us money.
That's a form of motion?
That's in form of a motion.
Second.
Peter?
I don't see how it's going to save, because all you're doing is giving them 2 more days of vacation, and we're closing down for services that people might need now that you're going to inconvenience. Isn't the whole purpose of PTO to take time off when you want it? I think we should stick to the Christmas party like we've done.
What was the other the second.
The second option was to take so Christmas is on Wednesday, to give them Tuesday off. And on Monday afternoon, have a, excuse me, a get-together over at Onions with appetizers, and if they wanted to buy their own drinks, they'd have to buy their own drinks. So the town would support some kind of event over there, paying for appetizers, and then give the day off on Tuesday.
How many holidays do we give them currently?
Did you raise your hand?
11.
So we're now talking 12 or 13 for this year.
I think that when they came up with this idea, it was because it had been done before. The selectmen had done it before, so. John?
Pat?
It's gotta be told. Thank you.
No, you can say.
So, I'm not opening my mouth, remember that. The, one of the reasons is that, you know, we spend anywhere from $500 to, in the past, $900 on food. Half of the time, there's a lot of things, particularly police, that have last-minute things that go on in town and they can't attend. And so then the employees stick around, wait for the half a day, we give them the half a day, and they stick around for the party, and then the people that stick around take half the food home because we order so much food. And why not just let them go home and enjoy their families? That's my point. I mean, half of the, most of the food goes home with them because they're not eating it, so, or it gets wasted, so. I think this is just a better way to let them enjoy their families.
Kathleen, did you?
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
agree with
everybody
Pat.
gets
I
a
think
chance
both
to
options
say
include
it.
days off, so the first option, the most popular one, gives them an extra day off. Christmas is a time of family.
Extra.
No, they get a Christmas holiday anyway, so that they would get the 2 days afterwards.
So the
Two
first
extra
option,
days.
they'd have Thursday and Friday off. The second option, they'd have Tuesday off. So
Right.
I say give them the 2 days off. It's the time for family, as Pat said.
Well, I just haven't had a chance to say anything yet, Chandra. But hey,
You have your hand raised?
yeah, I got permission from everybody. You know, this is interesting because it puts you, it's not trying to be a Scrooge or anything like that, but, you know, the people in town, especially towards the end of the year, they have things that they need to get accomplished and we have a generous PTO policy, we have a generous holiday policy, and it's nice to do something for the employees, but just saying, close town hall down and for 2 days, and it just doesn't seem right to me. I think having the Christmas party, potluck, and I'm against giving the 2 days off. Yeah.
Yeah, we just approved a tax rate that for a lot of people are seeing an increase of hundreds of dollars. And okay, so now let's give people more time off, even though they have a generous policy already. I just can't see you supporting it.
We have some public comment.
Is there an option to award every town employee one flex day to be used during that week? As a state employee, we get 3 floating holidays. Can they be awarded, rather than giving them 2 days, can they be awarded a flex day, divide the team in half, and still maintain a basic level of service for town hall to be open with a skeleton crew? Make everybody pick a Tuesday or, either draw or by volunteer, split the team in half, and award one flex day. Is that something that?
So, and change the PTO policy that.
Rather than giving everybody 2 days that they didn't have, it's my understanding that they would be going from 11 to 13, getting 2 days in lieu of a party. Can they get 1 day in lieu of a party, and they get to pick? Because some people want Christmas Eve, some people don't want Christmas Eve, and Give everybody something, don't give them 2 days.
We don't have-
Anything else?
I'll just say, kind of in response here, we don't have flex days, and we don't have control of the town clerk's office. She can close that whenever she wants, for as long as she wants.
They would be getting, usually they get half a day, so the half a day, and then they would have Christmas. So we're actually doing a day and a half, not 2 days, but.
Anything else? The motion was to allow for the employees to have the Thursday and the Friday after Christmas off. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
I'm in favor. I'm an aye. I'm sorry, that I didn't mean to be dramatic, but I have to do it.
That takes care of that. We're done.
That passes.
Yeah, so moved, 3-2.
All right. I am sure that they will be very pleased with that. So thank you on behalf of the employees. Pat, were you,
I'm finished, thanks.
did you want to bring up the budget committee?
Oh, that's up to the board what they're gonna do. I mean,
Well, you would,
I submitted the resignation a couple weeks ago, and the board hasn't moved on it yet.
Pat's resigned from budget committee, so.
As ex officio, 3 weeks ago.
2, right before, 2 meetings ago.
So,
So, we need to have an ex officio. What do we have now? Do we
An
have-
alternate is
Alternate.
Peter.
How are you doing?
Barry.
Let's nominate Joe to be the ex officio for the budget committee.
He can't, because he's on the planning board.
Planning board.
Just because he's out of the room.
Oh, yes.
You know, those.
He can't because he's on the planning board.
Catherine.
If there's nobody else, I'll do it. I think I threw my notes away.
Um,
Bear Gringo.
Do you want me to do ex officio? I can split some of it with you, or? If you
No,
got
I'll
stuff
do
or-
it. If it's gonna make it easy on the rest of you guys, I'll do it. It's only for a few more weeks.
It's pretty much every Wednesday.
It's,
And-
I know that, but it's only for what, November, December, and pretty much done. January,
Couple in there.
I'll just have to do some studying. Like I said, I'm pretty green on.
I'll give you my book.
Thank you. I'll do some studying.
Congratulations, Joe.
So Joe, I missed something. We were about to
Voted
nominate.
again?
You were saved by the planning board.
What?
Well,
What?
we
Budget
needed a new
committee.
budget committee ex officio every single Wednesday night.
In addition to the planning board?
Well, you can,
Yeah.
so
You
you
can't.
would let go of yours. Catherine volunteered to do it all.
Out of default. Pat said she'd give me your notes. I'll do some studying.
The notes just say, run!
So do we should vote on that. Make official.
I make motion that Catherine is now the ex officio of the budget committee.
Second.
We have a motion and second
I do have some comments.
discussion.
I would like to thank Pat for all the time that she's put into this. And I know it's a grueling thing. Thank you very much.
Welcome, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So moved, unanimous.
I'll decline vote.
Oh.
It's more proper than abstaining.
4. Anything else, Pat?
Not for me, no thank you.
Okay.
Sure. So first thing on my action items, we received a request from the Tilton North and Northfield Aqueduct Company wanting to use the variable message board on November 14th and 15th for their rate study meeting. And they're asking for your approval. Is this something that we would allow?
Is the police department, have they been, do they need it for those dates for any reason whatsoever, or the police study building committee?
There, we are going to be using it for the presentation. I don't know if it's the 14th and 15th. If we're not using it, my vote's yes.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
I don't believe so, right, Tim? There's nothing,
I didn't think there was.
no, I don't think there is.
I don't have a problem if the police don't need it for those dates and the town doesn't need it, I don't have a problem.
So consensus?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Pat, is it okay with it? Peter?
Who's setting it up? The PD gonna set it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they'll have it posted on November 14th and 15th. Their meeting is on the 18th at 6 o'clock at the Pines Community Center.
Okay, and I'm okay with it. Joe?
Yes.
Catherine? Same thing, please
Mhm.
check with them.
Okay.
Or the lead.
True Green accident update. The DOT, you heard earlier from Peter that they did go down and take a look at the wall. And I sent you all a copy of that report. There's a hard copy in your folder for anyone who didn't see it in their email. I did check with Superior Fence, following up on Catherine's suggestion that they install a fence in the soil adjacent to the capstones, and they said that they could do that. And so really my question to you now is, you know, do you want to go forward and install the fence or the railing? And the railing would match the railing that's next, that's by Best Pocket Park, so it would match that. DOT's looked at that. They're, not that we need their approval, but we've entered into an MOU with them. I did check with Tim to see if we have the money in the budget to do it. You know, there are one of two ways to go with this. You can just hold off and have that chain link fence there for probably the next 3 years until we get True Green to pay up, or we put the railing in and continue to go after them to pay for the fence. And the quote for the fence or the railing is $13,620. I did way back go try to get 3 different estimates. This is, I had one fence company decline to even bid on it, and the other one just never called back. Superior gave me their quote. They actually came out and walked with Catherine and I. So it's $13,620 for 48-inch high commercial grade decorative aluminum fence, a 3-rail black in color, 2.5-inch square posts with flat caps, based on 296 linear feet. Doesn't include a gate down at the Franklin side. It's going to cost an additional $625 to take down the existing fence and dispose of. We could probably get Kevin to do that, I would think, so we wouldn't have to spend
He
that much.
said when he put it up, he was gonna reuse it.
Well,
No,
we were
it's-
talking about the rails that's right now
Oh,
in the
I thought he
capstone.
meant the chain link.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then the question is do you want a gate at the end that's closest to Cropsey? I talked to Cropsey today, said if we didn't do it, he most likely would do it. Either way, insurance is gonna pay for it one way or the other, so.
There isn't a gate now.
There's not.
Does that get the chain link fence down?
It does.
I think one of the things, just for safety reasons, so that somebody could get through that gate, through and down to the river, it would be nice to have the gate, because that's a lower end down there, and if somebody went in or something, it would be easier.
It will be open.
It would be openable.
But you're gating somebody else's property off.
Whose property is all of that? We're actually,
Cropsies.
Jim Cropsey. So it really should be up to him if he wants the gate or not.
well, presently, my thoughts were presently the fence that was there, the two pipes, does allow for somebody to climb through, but the type of fencing we're putting up now will not allow anybody to climb through. So if there was a rescue or somebody need to go down there or something like that, it would be very difficult for them to get over that.
He also has a picnic table behind his building down there.
Matt?
Do you have a picture of the fencing that's going up there now? Because my understanding, it's relatively the same as Vest Pocket, right? So Vest Pocket, you can crawl in there.
Right.
So,
You can climb through it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a, do you have a picture?
I don't have
Pass one?
a picture.
Yeah.
I can take a picture of Best Pocket Park, that railing, but it's just, it's the same railing. And it isn't, I thought it had to be something for security, but it doesn't because people fish off that.
right, because you can,
Yeah.
so don't be deceived by that, because you're still gonna be able to
Right.
crawl into that.
Yeah.
At Vest Pocket, everybody, you can still get through that fence, but where are they gonna put the gate? Down below on,
No,
past the
so-
sidewalk
So.
on
yeah.
his car property?
Well, so you know where the edge of his property is the brick wall of his
Yes.
property. So it would be attached there, and then the gate, that it would be attached to the fence, because the fence would only go so far, and then it stops. I hate to say at the edge of our property, because we're not claiming it either. Nobody's claiming, anything, we're just trying to get it fixed.
But why would you put a gate? So that you
Because
can't get into the,
So people can't go, get in easy. It was just one of the options.
Oh, it was a gate instead of being wide open?
Right now, the
It was-
existing rail ends probably 10 or 12
So,
feet.
so people,
Before
rescue
building.
could still get through there pretty
So-
easily.
just continue the the rail, same kind of rail.
Well, again, to Catherine's point, I think she made it, it's not, at that point, it's Jim's property. I got the quote for the gate, just so you had additional information.
How much was the quote?
The quote for the gate was $1,760, $1,760, and like I say, when I talked to Jim Cropsey today, he said that if we didn't do it, we'd do it.
The other question I had was, at what grade are they going to be placing this fence at, since we haven't established a sidewalk and where it will begin or end, or what level it will be at? How are we gonna? So you know what I'm saying? Because right now, it's going like that through there, so
Well,
if
it's
they're gonna
going
put
like,
it in.
it's going like that on the capstones, on the soil.
I
It's
would
not.
suspect that he would put that up in concert with the Public Works Director.
Yeah.
Because did we have pavement right up to the rocks?
No, it's soil.
Or did we have
Yes,
soil?
well, we did.
underneath
No, it was paved sidewalk. It's been 4 or 5 years that we've been stone dust waiting to pave it
Oh, we have been waiting to pay that?
because of the sinkholes
Oh, I see.
there? Pretty bad.
before your time.
Okay.
John,
Peter?
my only concern is the original setup with the fence on the capstones. The fishermen can put their feet on the capstones, lean on the rail and fish. Now that you put it on the other side, it may make it less comfortable for them, so we may hear some feedback from some of your fishermen that fish there.
Under the circumstances, I think it would be safer not on the capstones.
Why?
I think it's gonna be more secure.
Why? How,
Those capstones just sit there, they're not,
so there's no adhesives that we could use to secure them to the wall?
that wall is not adhesive together.
It's funny, before the truck ran into it, it stayed there for decades and decades and decades, no problem.
Did you ever lean against it?
They've been fishing against it for quite a while.
So mine, first time I ever leaned against it, I didn't do it again.
So I guess we get two things. Do we want to have it in the capstones, or do we want to have it on the land? And the other thing would be, is do we want to proceed immediately or as soon as possible, and then collect the money from True Green? Or do we want to just continue up to True Green? I'm gonna make a motion that we proceed, unless somebody else had a motion first.
We already voted, Mr. Chairman, last week to have it in the to have it not in the capstones.
Because did we vote on that last week? I forgot.
Yeah, we did.
Make sure, we'll have to make sure that's in the minute for that. And that was to not have it in capstones.
Not have it in the capstones, have it on the outside of the capstones.
Do we know what their plan was on once they cut the pipes off the capstone, because I saw several that looked like they were up a foot. What are we going to do on that hole to seal it up?
Well, I think that's where we're having that conversation with Kevin, because we're gonna save the money by
No, I
having
know.
Kevin doing it.
But we've got to do something, because just cutting it, it'll still have rough edges. I think we need some sort of, I don't know, epoxy or something.
And I believe if it's just left as a hole, water gets in there, that's how they break
Correct.
rocks.
I would talk to Kevin about that, and I think
Get that done, right.
Peters,
Good
whoever
idea.
brought that up about the leveling of the, I would talk to Kevin about that too, so that is
Set the
probably
grade.
before they put the fence in.
Okay, so the next question, somebody want to make a motion for going before?
Motion to go forward and put the rail fence in that Jeannie described, with a gate if Mr. Cropsey wishes to have it there and pay for it.
Second.
Any other discussion on that?
So if Mr. Cropsey,
Go ahead.
Go. Wants to pay for the gate, we're going to allow him to pay for it? Is that part of your motion? And
Well, and if he wants it there, because it is gating on his property, from his property, if you will.
So I have a question, just for clarification. So if he does not want the gate, the fence will just end and
Where
will
it
be
ends now.
And it would be up to him to,
close it off as he sees fit. Okay. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
It's 4-1. Motion approved.
thank you. Chuck and Kathy Mitchell were successful in getting the Moose Plate grant, as you know. We have a contract, I don't want to say a contract, but a document that needs to be signed. Unfortunately, there's only one signature line, 2 places that I need to get signed so that we can accept the funds from the state of New Hampshire. So,
I move that the chairman sign it.
Second.
Motion second to have the chairman sign the certificate of municipality for the grant for the Moose Plates for the map. All those in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you. I did confirm with Birch Hill Kennels that the animal confinement contract will remain at the same price as 2019. The contract is in the to-be-signed file. If you haven't signed it, if you're okay, go ahead and sign it.
Is the language in the contract the same too?
It is, other than the dates. Do you need a motion?
No.
No? Okay. I did send a letter to Northfield for the tree removal by New Sky at $1,800. Chairman Crowley wanted to know if we should close the island because of a safety issue.
New Sky will probably request that they close it.
Well, so
He's
just
talking
for
about now.
clarification, yeah.
In general,
Yes.
tomorrow.
He hasn't, their board meets on the 4th, and so that's when they'll take it up. So they haven't agreed to pay for half of this yet. But because when I sent him the letter, I said, because it's a hazardous situation, he said, well, should we close the island now? And I said, well, I'll talk to the selectmen and see what they think.
Absolutely.
Pierre?
Wasn't the recommendation from the expert that it basically needed to come down relatively soon? And it wasn't like if we don't do it tomorrow, it's going to collapse, but it's a dying tree.
Well, what I heard from all of them was that there's a piece that's dead that you could cut, and you could prop the tree. I heard anywhere from 1 to 5 years that the tree would last, but it's dying and it's
Correct.
gone. There's no way to save it. So I have heard that there's concern. And I wondered about that when they were talking about the high winds, if we were going to have a problem with it. So that piece that's dead, yeah, that could be a concern right now. The rest of the tree, I don't think if they're saying it's 1 to 5 years that it's going to be okay. But the piece in the middle that's dead, yeah, that would be a concern.
We've identified a tree that has dead limbs that could fall on people. I think we should close the island until the tree is down.
Right. Now, close it now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Could we put some tape around it and block off that section around the tree?
Well,
In the wind, branches just don't fall straight down.
that's the tree nearest the gazebo, right? So how would you?
It's about 40 feet away from the gazebo.
Is it that? I don't. That.
The trunk may be, but the crown is not.
So where would we?
At the perimeter of the branches.
I think the island should be closed. If we're gonna have those high of winds.
No, you're not talking about this one night, right? You talk just one night?
No, I
I'm talking
want.
about closing, I said close until the tree's down.
Okay, so not just with the high winds tonight?
Yeah.
If you,
Go ahead, Pam.
do you remember when we had the liability and when somebody fell through it and they said, the lawyer said, once we knew about a liability, then that's when you're liable for that. You own it. Your accountability for it. When you have that branch, we've hired somebody. We know that they're going to get there to it. We have to wait for Northfield. But in the meantime, the one thing that we can do is to take every precaution not to have people rummage in the island. We can't predict that children, even if we put tape around a tree, that they're not going to go around that tape. After all, it's Halloween. Kids go under tape, around tape. They run off. The parents aren't watching or whatever. That even though the onus isn't on us, we don't want them to get hurt. I wouldn't want to take that responsibility for that, for someone else to get hurt. And that branch is pretty dead up there. It's been dead for quite some time, and with the high winds coming in. I would prefer that the police in highway just cut it off right at the bridge, no one allowed over the bridge, and just say it's closed until further notice, and then when New Sky gets out there next week, after Tuesday, they'll go out there right away, and they know it's a problem, and take it down. Then we can open it up and go for the Christmas lights.
Joe?
Can we unilaterally close the bridge, close off the island? The bridge is on our side, sure, but Northfield currently is 50-50.
We'll close half, Joe.
Well, this is
Excellent.
coming, this is coming from
Yeah, it's,
Northfield,
From
so-
one selectman in Northfield.
right, and so if this is what you
Yeah,
say here, I would call,
Right.
call him and tell him that this board has said, yes, we think it should be closed.
Closed, right?
But
do they?
to Pat's point, and I could talk with an attorney, but I agree, once you know that it's, an issue, that it's a potential danger, a potential hazard, you knew, right? We know. And if
We've
some,
known for months.
right. And unfortunately, government moves slow, but I don't even, I would go back to him and tell him that the selectmen think it should be closed, if that's what you agree to. And then they're meeting on the 4th. But I guess I think I'd probably close it off now.
Joe?
One more question. How long potentially, if we close that island tomorrow, how long potentially would it remain closed? When
Well-
can the tree guys get in there to do what they have to do?
So that's a good question, and once I hear back from, and let's just say, let me just put this out there, so what happens on the 4th if on the 5th I get a call from Northfield and they say, no, we're not going to share in this, what are you going to do? There's a liability there, are you going to, take care of it? Because that's one thing you have to consider. The second thing is if on the 5th they call and they say, yes, we're going to share in it, then I would actually call New Sky next week first thing and say, potentially this is going to come down soon, how soon can we get you out there? So to your question, maybe it would be shut down for 1-2 weeks. Because I would impress upon them that it's an emergency and we need to get it done.
I have one more
Go ahead, Joe.
question. We oftentimes have events, things out on the island. And I was wondering that over the course of the next few weeks, if anything was scheduled.
I'm not aware of anything. I'd have to check with Gail. I don't know if
Well,
anyone
they
else.
could just be notified,
Right.
because even if it was scheduled,
Mhm.
we don't want anybody to get hurt.
Good point.
I think we can close down a quarter of that area. Keep it safe. I can tell you now, I go down the Wild Trail, I go many places in this town. Look up. I can tell you right now, you're in danger of getting hit by branches and that. To close the whole, what we do, close down the whole Wild Trail because there's a couple trees. It's usually when something's spotted, we close off that area. And so that's my opinion.
So what would you like me to tell the chairman of the Northfield Board in response to his question?
Consensus or motion?
I'm a close.
I'm a close.
I'm a close, and if they don't pay for it, I still think we need to take it down. If that's the questions you're asking.
Everybody good with that? So, Peter?
I don't have to vote now.
I know. You already know how I am.
I'm a close.
So, we'll close the island, effective immediately, and post it, and notify the tree that we want to get it done regardless, and prior to even the selectmen in Northfield voting. Right? And that will get things going as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Let me just add one thing. When we close the island in the winter, people still go over there. So if we're gonna close this for safety reasons, that they actually build a barricade on that bridge that people can't go through.
Right,
Yeah,
and say
block
closed.
block the entrance.
Right,
Right.
that says closed. and
Right.
go
Block,
in.
yeah.
Closed for safety.
Okay,
It has to say closed for safety because that was the criteria that we had when it was the bridge, and we were building a new bridge. We put cones up and it said closed for safety, do not enter, whatever.
okay.
Just grab a section of fence from down at Cropsy's and slide it there.
Good deed.
That would be a good idea because it would be 6
So-
foot.
Can you check with Gail, make sure nobody's
Yes,
reserved
I will. And, yes, I will.
And thank Wayne
reservation for
Crowley
the tree
thinking
company?
of it.
What's that?
I said, thank Wayne Crowley for thinking of it.
Okay. The next item on my list is follow-up to the conversation I had with you a couple of weeks ago about the Health Trust FSA program. Somebody had questioned whether we could remove the administrative fees and then distribute the balance. The answer is yes. So in talking with the folks over there, the administration fee is $2.75 per person for the administrative fee. 15 people are using the FSA, so we're talking about $41.25. It does not include the finance/administration overhead, so it's just a straight fee. If you add to that the outstanding debt, because I learned in talking to the lady that the money that I talked to you before about those debit card transactions could be taken from that balance, and that was $821. So the total will be $862.25, leaving a balance of $1,442.55 that could be distributed. But interestingly, the funds would be distributed forward to new enrollees, not to the current enrollees. Because I asked the question, well, what about those 2 people who owed on their debit cards? Do they get this money too? And that's when she said, well, no, because unless they're part of the new enrollees, because the money moves forward.
So in 2020, those that enroll in 2020 would get it?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so assuming 15 people enrolled in the new plan year, the amount each employee would get would be $96.17 each. So my recommendation is to keep the money.
What will we do?
It goes to reduce our administrative
Right.
burden. And again,
Yeah.
because if going forward,
This
you run
happens
into
next
these
year.
debit card
Yeah.
situations again.
And yes to Jeannie's recommendation.
Yes to Jeannie's recommendation. Yep.
Consensus?
Yes.
Unanimous consensus?
Okay, all right, good, thank you. Draft stipend policy for boards, committees, commissions. I drafted something up based on various conversations I've heard and wanted to see if you want to take a look at this and talk about it, or we can come back to it, but this is something that I've heard you have wanted for a while, so I'd like to see if we could come to consensus on it, or, like I say, if you want to wait a week and look at it, that's fine.
I'd rather also take a look at meeting frequency, because
Yeah.
planning board and and budget do quite a few meetings and a lot of the others, and
So, so I think what you're talking about is a little different than some of the things that we've heard before is if there are 10 meetings and somebody only goes to 2, they shouldn't get the full stipend, and we can't do that. When Tim and I attended the wage and hour,
Yes.
the wage and hour workshop, we learned that you can't prorate a stipend. It's against the labor laws, because then it's considered a wage, and it's not a wage, it's a stipend. But to your point of how many times a committee meets, I don't think that really was addressed. It was if they didn't
But-
show up.
that should allow different levels of stipends. A board that meets twice as much as another should be able to get twice the stipend.
Is this a new amount, or is this what it's always been?
It's what it is now.
Are you aware of what the policy was with the Conservation Commission? I don't know if you...
Well, the Conservation Commission, I believe, wants to pay alternates, and they put that in their budget this year, right, Tim?
Yes.
And we don't allow for stipends for alternates.
I think they had, the policy was if you had to attend, it was something with, if you attended 50% of the meetings, you got...
See, and that's what I'm saying, the Department of Labor says you can't do that. It's against the law, you can't do that. But what Peter's suggesting is a little different. That's
Yeah.
if planning board meets, 20 times, and trustee of the trust funds meets 2 times, do they all get $400 as a stipend? That, I think, is up for you to decide.
I think they should all be equal. I don't think one board is more important than the other. They all work very hard. They all have different tasks.
So what would you suggest, Catherine and John, what would you suggest in trying to rectify somebody that only meets twice a year and then like planning a budget meets like every week?
Budget only meets every week in the fall.
Right.
So for, what, September, so about 5 months. Planning meets every 2 weeks and sometimes more, all year long.
Budget meets once a month, which is half of planning or less.
No.
Same.
Budget does, sometimes
I mean,
budget doesn't meet at all.
ZBA.
Oh, okay.
ZBA,
ZBA.
once.
Sometimes they'll have an extra meeting,
and sometimes they don't meet, period, for months.
yeah.
That's a good
But like I said, their job is no less important than another.
But
Could-
this, go ahead, John.
Could we set a specific amount for each committee to take a look at? So
Well, that-
budget committee would be 400?
I think that's what Peter's suggesting, and I will tell you that there are towns who don't give stipends, period. I'm not suggesting that, clearly I think this is something that's important to you, but, so I think it's whatever you decide, you just can't prorate. You can't say if somebody doesn't show up, they're not gonna get.
If the purpose of the stipend is to help compensate for some of their expenses for performing duties, then to me, if I'm meeting twice as much, I should get a little more than the one that meets half as much as me.
I think these stipends are way beyond compensating. They're very generous.
It's not meant to pay for your time, he said it's meant to pay for your,
No,
You don't even pay for
expense.
gas, trust me, on some of these meetings. Some of these people that are meeting like planning board and budget to come every week, like budget, what do they meet, 20 times a year, or 26 times a year at least, right? And planning, almost the same, or thereabout, if they have a special meeting, $400.
but they're coming from town. It's local, right?
Right.
So you're saying that 400 doesn't cover that?
Most
It
communities
wasn't
don't
with me
get,
with my Explorer.
most communities don't get
It
stipends.
starts the engine.
Well, why is this list all the same except for one?
Well, the sewer commission is elected, that's why.
Well, some of these are
So is the
elected.
trustee of the trust fund,
Different.
so is the budget committee. I'm just wondering why.
The sewer commission is a governing body like the selectmen. They probably shouldn't be on this
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, right, because the selectmen aren't on this list.
No.
Do you consider that stipend? Because you gave me that list,
It's a stipend that, it's on the list because it's a stipend we pay once a year, and it's paid with the rest of the stipends.
Whereas the sewer commissioners should get more? Like-
I believe per the RSA, the Board of Selectmen sets that stipend.
For the sewer commissioners?
Yeah.
I think that's how the
Yes.
RSA reads.
Seriously?
Yeah.
When was the last time that was changed?
Not in 13 years that I can tell you.
Yeah.
So,
You don't mend your ways, it might be 13.
so, Tim, you're saying because they get paid once a year, that's why they're on this list, and that the selectmen get paid more than
The
once?
selectmen are paid monthly.
The selectmen make more than we do. Their job is a lot different. The sewer commissioner's job is different.
So do you want to try to resolve this tonight, or do you want to think about it? I would like to try to get it resolved, one or the other, because
I
it's
would like to see
been hanging out there.
the numbers, how many members there are in, how many times they meet a year. Is that too much?
How many members and how often they meet? Why does the number of members matter? I could see the,
Well, this is definitely what they get now.
It
I mean,
is.
so we've adopted it, in essence, we've already adopted this. This is a policy that's already in effect. But there's inconsistencies in that what you are asking us is to adopt it in that we've eliminated the alternate for conservation, we've eliminated the alternate for
you've eliminated,
planning board, right? The
Alternates period for any.
alternate period for
Any
anybody,
committee.
that they don't get paid.
and it kind of answers the question that has come up more than a few times of why don't we prorate? We don't prorate because we can't prorate. So that's,
So what happens if somebody steps down, let's say in February, somebody steps down, the alternate takes the place for the rest of the year? Does that alternate get paid for the rest of the year, or no?
No, because they're no longer an alternate, they become a full member.
So do they get a stipend?
Well, yeah,
They
they're
both
a
get
full member.
Okay,
stipend.
got it.
So they both would get a stipend all year.
would that be true?
You
No,
step
we
down.
don't pay alternates.
Probably.
Well, according
Yeah.
according to what you just said,
He said
you
yes.
don't get prorated, but you don't, okay.
Right, he said yes.
So if they resign in February, come December, they'll still get a stipend.
According to what we're hearing.
I think it would be up
And
to,
so,
up
and
to
then
the
I'll
board.
word it that,
Design, it shouldn't get anything.
but in,
Read this conversation I wouldn't have.
I'll check on that,
That's
just
what we
to,
used to do.
So there's not much more work that we need to have done. We've already established that alternates are not going to get paid
right, and
per the
so,
law.
so to the point of Peter and John asking, how often do they meet? I guess my question to you would be, then do you see going up on those who meet more often, or are you looking at reducing the stipend for the people who've been used to getting a $400 stipend, reducing it down? You going up, you going down?
I wouldn't go down on anybody, but I would, if need be, on the two that do extensive work, which would be budget and planning, correct? Is that what you're thinking? Peter? Budget and planning?
Predominantly.
Okay. Then I would look at the numbers. I don't know how often that they meet, but the numbers on budget and planning, and look at how much they meet, and if it's feasible, perhaps maybe that we should take a look at that and see if it's necessary to go up, but I wouldn't go down on anybody.
Okay.
Personally, that's my opinion, but nobody's asked for it, so.
So I need some direction. What would you like me to do?
I think
I'm
this-
good with this.
Seems that they're removing stipends for alternates. I think it would be nice to let the chair of the Conservation Commission know and see if he has any input on this.
We did last year when we took it out of the budget.
Right, we did.
We've
Oh,
never
so-
paid alternate stipends.
Right. We did put it in there last night. But if this is a policy here, then can we, should we say no alternates?
Well, I think it says right there.
There should be no stipends for alternates.
Oh, my pardon, I'm sorry, I did not see that. That's good. I'm good with this then. And if they want to go and look at that other amounts at another time, that's fine too. But I'm good with this.
This has served us for many years. We're just making it
Written policy.
so everybody is on the same page.
Except you really need to look at the, in all honesty, and I'm not saying this to gain points, you really need to look at the sewer commission, and if we are in charge of that, and we haven't looked at it for the last 20 years, and the Board of Selectmen are in charge of that, not because there's two commissions on the board, but think about when it was last looked at. In your day, was it? It's always been $1,000?
Not that I know of in 20 years. I've never, so in 20 years as a selectman, I've never voted on a sewer commissioner stipend.
Nor have I. On budget committee, you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it in 10 years.
How many years you been on budget committee, John?
It's 1996.
Yeah.
So,
So for this policy, what's the consensus?
Well, I would have to say that right at the very beginning, you said how everybody's work was very important, and all the hours they put in and so on and so forth, except for one commission is more important apparently than the others. If it's all the same, then I could see it, because that was ostensibly, I never even realized that the sewer commission's stipends or how much it was. I never really gave it any thought, but now that I see it, it's like, well, it's significantly more than the others, and just wondering why.
Would you like an answer?
Well, I was wondering why, yeah.
I would say no different than the fire district and the water district have commissioners, all have salaries in that range. All of those are running budgets that sewer gets it through ratepayers, where the others are running via the town, so it's sort of an apples and oranges comparison.
You
What
can't,
is
you can't compare the sewer commissioner's responsibilities to the
Yeah.
rest of the budgets and committees on this form.
Thank you.
I thought that
Fire.
fire, I think, went up to
I
1,200.
think
They were
everybody
not.
thinks they're special in their own way, and some of them do have very responsible things. Parks commissioners do a lot of time arranging, and you see a lot of time spent setting things up and doing that. The planning board, most certainly, they spend a lot of time reviewing things and have an enormous amount of responsibility.
I
As
wasn't
seniors,
diminishing the other board's responsibilities. I was just saying the sewer commissioner's responsibilities is significantly more than these others. And that they're directly answerable to the people that pay their fees to the sewer commission, et cetera. They're a second governing body in this town.
Right.
None of these other boards and committees are a governing body
So the
with
water,
that type of responsibility.
the water commissioners are up around $3,000 or $3,200 for doing what they do in relative to water, as opposed to sewer
What water
commissioners.
commissioners?
The aqueduct.
Because we don't get that down in lock
What do
here.
you,
We're a governing body in our own little way.
Yeah, sure.
what do you,
The stipend down there is $700 per year.
Being shortchanged, Joe.
I didn't even realize there was a stipend. I don't think anybody who's on these things does it for the $400.
No.
Or the $1,000?
Nope, well, I didn't.
Or the selectmen. We
Or
certainly-
the select,
If you put in what we actually do, and it's pennies on it. All right, I make a motion that we accept the stipend policy.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Nay.
I will draft up one
You-
for your signature next week.
Can I sign this? We
Uh,
pass
well,
this?
It says draft on it.
This
Oh.
Jeff.
Yeah.
So
Where's the whiteout?
are we gonna look into the hours, though? You're still gonna continue to give us the amount of hours people work? I mean, not the hours, but how many times
Yeah,
they eat and stuff?
all right.
That should be easy finding agenda dates.
So you've got in your FYI information on the health trust renewal rates. I don't know if you're ready to sign that tonight. You don't have to, we've got some time. I just wanted to put that out there. You've got the Primex renewal rates. Gave you a little information on where we're at with the Tree Streets parking. I think we're making progress. The parking sign's been ordered and Officer Gilman's working on the other two issues. The only other question that I had for all of you is the financials on the outside agencies are all in your budget folders. Is there any agency you want to see? Or, actually, Tim, I think you're working on that, aren't you?
Not outside
Oh.
agencies.
I thought that was in your,
That was just a reminder.
okay. So is there any outside agency that this board wants to meet with? You had suggested that you wanted to see the financials last time of Waypoint Cap and Lakes Region Mental Health. They're in your budget folders. And the only one it sounded to me like that you want to see is Waypoint. So I'm just asking you, is there anyone you want to see on the outside agencies?
If anybody new pops in there, I'd like to see them. Somebody that we haven't previously funded or last year.
Okay, anyone new? Okay.
Waypoint is Child Services.
Yeah.
that was
Right?
New name, but that I don't need. I can read their financials.
Okay.
I just had one question on the form that you gave me to sign earlier.
Yeah.
The second page has to be signed before notary.
Yeah, I can, if you want to come in tomorrow, you can do it in front of Gail, or,
Did you want to notarize that? So,
Mine's right in the middle of being renewed, and I'm not sure when it expires and renews, but I don't want to take a chance. They've already sent it in to be renewed, I don't want to take that chance. But thank you for asking.
so are you able to
I
come
don't
in?
think I will be able to come in tomorrow.
Um,
The first page gets signed, and then it gets notarized. At the notary, it says that it's the clerk who's getting notarized. And the second page, this is a copy of what you have.
It's original.
This is the original.
Mhm.
So we could make it, change the motion that any of the selectmen can appear here and sign for this.
Who can come in and sign that tomorrow?
I can be here mid-afternoon.
I'm home all
There
day
you go.
tomorrow.
She's on all day.
Make a motion that Pat Constantino sign the
Documents for the
Moose Plate Grant.
Moose Plate grant document.
I'll second that.
Motion second to have Pat sign the Moose Lake grant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thanks, Pat.
That's it for me. Unless anyone has any questions for me.
Same page, and there's the answer.
Jeannie, you have a non-public?
Yes, we do have a non-public, unless there's other business.
Anything else going on there? It's not a Keno hat, is it?
Just lottery.
Okay,
Yeah.
just checking.
They dropped off a van, but they dropped off other swag.
I don't want a Keno hat.
Huh?
I don't want one.
Really. I'll put the sign out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sid.
So I'll make a motion, we go into non-public personnel as per RSA 91A dash 91-A:3, paragraph 2. And that would be A, dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or the disciplining of such employee or other investigation of any charges against him unless the employee affected, 1, has the right to a meeting, and 2, requests a meeting open, in which case the request shall be granted. Roll call.
Constantino, yes.
Dawson, yes.
Fog, yes.
Jessamine, yes.
Scanlon, yes.
It's unanimous. We are red is run. I'd like to make a motion to seal the minutes of the non-public session as they pertain to personnel. Permanent.
Second.
A motion second. All those in favor say aye.
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 I have a
Opposed?
question.
So moved.
I have a question. Soon, Catherine, soon. There was part of that that wasn't necessarily personnel.
Legal.
I would like to make a motion to seal the minutes of the non-public session as they pertain to a legal matter until such time as that matter may be resolved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Now, John, now,
So moved. Go for it.
motion to adjourn.
Oh, second.
John, Pat said.
Aye.
Coming to pick her up, so she can notarize.
Oh.
Oh,